Katie stood frozen, tears burning her cheeks as the man jabbed a finger in her face, screaming, "You stole my wallet, you thief. People like you shouldn't even be allowed out in public." Get ready to see how this story unfolds. Katie had never been late to work, not once in the 5 years she'd been greeting customers at Greenfield Groceries. She stood at the entrance with a gentle smile, wearing her name badge pinned carefully on her vest. The same customers came in daily, some every other day, and they all seemed to know Katie by name. She remembered their likes, their grandchildren's names, their birthdays. Even if she forgot bits and pieces, she always asked, always showed genuine enthusiasm. It was a trait that ran deeper than politeness. It came from a place of pure empathy that had defined her whole life. That morning, she arrived before opening, as usual, because it made her feel good to be part of the store's quiet beginnings. She helped straighten the carts, wiped down the handles, and chatted with the few early shift employees. Each one of them had a fondness for Katie, respecting the diligence and warmth she brought to the team. They saw her as more than an employee with Down syndrome. They saw her as the heartbeat of Greenfield Groceries, someone who made the place feel like home. There was something about the hush before the doors officially opened that Katie loved. A part of her recognized it as a sign of respect. The silent, empty aisles waiting for the rush of footsteps, the hum of cash registers, the chatter of neighbors reconnecting. She enjoyed watching Mr. Hill, the store manager, unlock the doors right at 7 a.m., giving her a nod and a smile. And every morning she repeated the same warm greeting in her mind, waiting for the first real customer to walk through. And inevitably the customers came. They trickled in, first just one or two, then a small flurry of retirees who preferred to shop early, then more by mid-morning. Katie's main station was near the entrance, where she happily offered handbaskets and an earnest, "Good morning, how are you today?" She knew many of the customers enough to ask specific questions like, "How's your granddaughter's piano lessons?" or "Enjoy that fishing trip." She remembered them because she genuinely cared. The first hours of that day followed their usual pattern. Neighbors stopped to ask Katie how she was doing, colleagues from the back stockroom teased her that she worked too hard, and a handful of new faces smiled hesitantly when she greeted them. She always made them feel comfortable, pointing them toward any aisle they needed. Everything seemed to be going just fine, until just after noon, when a man Katie had never seen before pushed through the doors. His presence was noticeable. Maybe it was his stride or the brusque way he brushed past another customer in a hurry. Katie, still at her post with the baskets, greeted him as she did everyone else. "Hello, welcome to Greenfield Groceries. Can I help you find something?" He barely looked at her. "No, I'm good," he said curtly, walking toward the produce section. Katie wasn't offended. She'd encountered many customers who were simply in a rush or not in the mood for pleasantries. A moment later, she went about her business, smiling at the next family who came in. Life at the store continued, but she did feel a small tug of unease. She noticed the man's expression was tense, but she shrugged it off. Everybody had bad days. She soon moved from the entrance to her secondary station near the middle of the store. Her job was flexible. She sometimes helped customers locate items, sometimes returned groceries to the right aisle after people changed their minds, and sometimes just strolled the store assisting with bagging if the lines got too long. She noticed the same man a few aisles over, glancing around while holding a few items. She couldn't make out what they were. He dropped something from his cart, a small object that clattered on the floor, and Katie instinctively moved closer. She was about to ask if he needed help, but he scooped it up hastily, shoving it deep into his pocket. Maybe a pen or a keychain. She turned away, not wanting him to think she was watching his every move. Customers appreciated respect for personal space. At around 12:30 p.m., the store began to fill with the lunchtime crowd, local employees from nearby offices, parents running midday errands, and the usual wave of folks grabbing something quick. Katie floated near the self-checkout lanes, helping people scan produce. That was when she heard the first commotion. A voice rose in agitation from the express checkout station. The same man stood there, rummaging through his pockets, a scowl forming on his face. Another cashier, Lucy, was trying to calm him, but his voice escalated. "I know I had it when I came in. It was in my jacket pocket." Katie paused, focusing all her attention on the scene. She didn't want to meddle in a customer's private issue, but she felt compelled to be near in case help was needed. He was patting himself down, exasperated, pulling everything out of his pockets. A few receipts, a phone, some loose change, no wallet. The man's frustration boiled over. He exclaimed loudly, "Someone must have stolen it." Lucy tried reassuring him. "Sir, it might have fallen somewhere. Maybe you dropped it in produce or in the aisles. I can help you look." He shook his head, voice tense. "No, I remember having it right before I checked out. I grabbed something else," and he stopped suddenly, turning his gaze around the store. Lucy gestured to call a manager for assistance. Mr. Hill promptly arrived, offering a soothing presence. He pledged that store security could check the cameras if needed, and that they would do whatever it took to find the wallet. The man seemed unconvinced but nodded. While Mr. Hill led him away to the manager's office to start searching the footage, Katie continued her rounds. She couldn't help but worry for the stranger. She'd had her own wallet slip out of pockets before. It wasn't unusual to lose things among groceries, especially if one was in a hurry. She hoped he would find it soon. Time passed. Katie busied herself with her routine tasks, collecting misplaced items, showing a new mother where to find baby formula, helping an elderly man weigh tomatoes, but she could feel a subtle tension in the air. Word spread fast among the staff that a wallet had gone missing and that the man suspected someone had stolen it. Around 1:30, Katie wandered back near the office and found Lucy, who was looking uneasy. Lucy murmured, "They can't find anything on the footage from the registers yet." "He's getting impatient." "What's his name?" Katie asked. "He introduced himself as Todd," Lucy said, glancing at the closed door of the manager's office. "Todd Jacobs, he's from out of town, just passing through for a meeting or something, and now he's lost his wallet and is pretty furious about it." Katie nodded, sympathy flooding her features. "I really hope they find it soon," she said softly. Before she could say anything else, the office door opened. Mr. Hill walked out, an uncertain expression on his face, with Todd right behind him. Todd's eyes scanned the hallway, landing on Katie. His posture stiffened and he looked suddenly furious, as though something in him had snapped. Katie saw the fury in his eyes and felt a tremor of unease. He pointed at Katie. "That's her," he said, loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. "That's the one who was tailing me in the aisles, was she?" Katie froze. Lucy reacted first. "Sir, Katie works here." "She's always around to help customers," Todd cut Lucy off. "I know what I saw," he jabbed a finger in Katie's direction. "She was right behind me. She must have seen my wallet and snatched it. Maybe she put it in that cart she was pushing around. She was behind me, always hovering." Katie's chest tightened with a mixture of confusion and anxiety. I didn't see your wallet," she managed to say, voice trembling a little. "I never touched," Todd advanced, though not physically threatening, but his anger was obvious. "Then where is it?" His glare darted to Mr. Hill. "You let anyone just roam around the store, you don't do background checks." The manager's face reddened. "Todd, I can assure you that Katie is one of our most trusted employees. We haven't seen any evidence that she took anything." Todd, unconvinced, began raising his voice for others to hear. "Well then, let's find that evidence. Check the tapes. She's always loitering around. Why else would she do that if not to take advantage of someone's carelessness?" A chill swept through the employees who had gathered near. Lucy stepped protectively in front of Katie, shaking her head vigorously. "Sir, you're making a huge mistake." But Todd's anger had been triggered too strongly. The frustration of losing his wallet, combined with the tension of not finding it on the security footage, propelled him into a public meltdown. Before Mr. Hill could intercept him, Todd marched out of the office hallway and into the main store, raising his voice at any shopper who would listen. "Check your pockets, people. You never know who's going to take your stuff while pretending to be sweet." Customers were startled but curious. Some recognized Katie at once. They gave Todd disapproving glares, but he pressed on. "They're always saying you can't trust someone just because they smile a lot," he yelled. Katie's face burned with shame. She wanted to hide behind one of the shelves. Instead, she stood there, trembling, tears pricking her eyes. Lucy was at her side, along with Mr. Hill. The manager cleared his throat. "Sir, let's step back into the office. This is not the way to handle the situation." Todd whipped around. "Of course you want to hush this up," he snapped. "It's your store. You'd do anything to protect your employees, wouldn't you? Even a thief." His eyes locked on Katie, and for a moment she felt utterly exposed, judged, and helpless. Mr. Hill pointed toward the manager's office again, trying to guide Todd away from the public eye. After a moment's hesitation, Todd followed, but not without throwing one last glare at Katie. "I'm not leaving here until that wallet is found," he declared, voice echoing across the aisles. Katie tried to steady herself, inhaling and exhaling in slow motions. Another coworker, Linda, gently guided her to a quieter corner, offering a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You haven't done anything wrong," Linda said softly. "Everyone in the store knows you. He's just upset." Katie managed a small nod, tears still stinging her eyes. She turned and saw a few customers looking on sympathetically. Some offered small smiles of support. She recognized Mrs. Miller, an older woman who always came in to buy fresh flowers on Fridays. Mrs. Miller mouthed, "You're okay," and held a thumbs up. That small gesture helped Katie hold on to her composure. Still, Todd's accusation gnawed at her spirit. Accusing her not just of theft, but insinuating she was intentionally lurking around in the aisles felt like a personal attack against her very nature. Katie prided herself on helping, on being the kind face in the store. Now a stranger was twisting her kindness into something suspicious. She didn't know how to defend herself against a mind already made up. Time edged forward. Todd stayed in the manager's office, combing through more camera angles. Mr. Hill insisted they look at every corner of the store, not just the registers. The staff cooperated readily, wanting to clear Katie's name. Meanwhile, customers asked Lucy or Linda quietly, "Is Katie okay? She wouldn't do something like that, right?" They all shook their heads emphatically. Every single person who knew Katie had no doubts whatsoever about her innocence. By early afternoon, there was still no sign of the wallet. Mr. Hill emerged from his office, beckoning Katie over. She gathered her courage and went, accompanied by Lucy. Todd was packing inside, muttering angrily. The moment Katie stepped through the door, Todd's head snapped up, eyes filled with suspicion. Mr. Hill stood behind the desk, arms folded. He spoke gently to Katie. "We've been checking the camera angles, but we can't see any instance of you taking or even handling a wallet. However, we haven't been able to track Todd's exact movements in one particular aisle where the camera's view is partially blocked by a promotional display. Todd believes that's where you might have taken it." "I didn't take it," Katie said softly but firmly. Todd's lip curled with contempt. "Yeah, well, the camera can't see you not taking it, can it?" Lucy put a hand on her hip. Would you stop? She didn't do anything. Why would she steal your wallet and then continue working like everything's fine? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, I don't know, Todd retorted. Maybe she took something from it. Maybe she's planning on sneaking it out later. Thieves can be cunning. He shot Katie a glare. You don't fool me. Katie felt her knees weaken, but she stood her ground. I'm sorry you can't find your wallet. I really am, but I didn't do anything wrong. Todd shook his head, jaw set. Then prove it. Turn out your pockets or something. Show me you don't have it. Lucy bristled. That's ridiculous. Katie, eager to clear her name, turned out her vest pockets, revealing nothing but a few tissues and a small slip of paper where she wrote down a grocery request for a friend. Todd stared, unsatisfied. Okay, so maybe you tucked it away somewhere else, he said, still unconvinced. Mr. Hill's voice went stern. Todd, you need to calm down. We'll keep checking everything, but we can't let you harass our employee. If you want, we can call the police and see if they can file a report or do a more thorough search. Todd took a step back, rubbing his temples. The thought of calling the police seemed to momentarily unsettle him. He glanced at Katie one more time with a mix of anger and desperation. Then he walked out of the office, clearly needing to cool down. Lucy gave Katie a reassuring side hug. Ignore him, she whispered. He has no idea who he's talking to. Mr. Hill sighed heavily. Katie, I want you to know we stand by you. You don't have to worry about losing your job or anything like that. No one here believes Todd's accusation, but let's see if we can help find that wallet so we can put this to rest. Katie nodded, though her heart still beat in a nervous rhythm. She felt humiliated by the public scenes Todd had created. The idea that strangers in the store might believe she was a thief shook her sense of security, but she reminded herself that most people knew her better than that. She wiped her eyes, took a deep breath, and offered a small smile of gratitude. Returning to the store floor, Katie resumed her duties. She did her best to greet new customers with her usual warmth, but it was obvious her spirit had taken a hit. She felt eyes on her, and the shame of being singled out weighed on her shoulders. A few regulars, noticing her sadness, asked if she was all right. She offered gentle reassurances that she was fine, even though inside she was troubled. In the late afternoon, the store's security manager, Tim, arrived. He had an expertise in scanning camera footage and identifying potential shoplifting incidents. Mr. Hill filled him in on the situation, and Tim went straight to the system to do a thorough review. Meanwhile, Todd hovered around the front of the store, glaring suspiciously at Katie every time she walked by. She tried her best to avoid contact. Lucy and Linda took turns making sure Katie wasn't alone. They feared Todd might cause another scene. As the day wore on, the story spread among employees and support for Katie was overwhelming. She received quiet pats on the shoulder, murmurs of, "We'll get this sorted," and encouraging nods from people she barely even spoke to in the past. Even the produce manager, who was typically gruff, stopped to offer a quick reassurance that they had her back. Despite the outpouring of kindness, Katie still felt an undercurrent of anxiety. What if the security footage truly couldn't exonerate her? What if Todd tried to take legal action against her? She'd never been in trouble in her life. Her parents had always worried about how the world might treat her, but she'd found so much acceptance in this job. Now it felt like a single man's accusation could unravel everything she'd built. Sometime around 5 p.m., Tim came out of the security office, a thoughtful expression on his face. He pulled Katie aside with Lucy and Mr. Hill, speaking quietly so Todd wouldn't overhear. I've scanned all the footage we have, including some angles we usually don't check. It's quite the puzzle. Todd is seen coming in with his wallet. We see it in his jacket pocket at the entrance. In the main aisles, it's not clearly visible, but we do see him rummage in his jacket a few times, maybe to check his phone or something. There's no moment captured of Katie touching Todd or reaching for his jacket, nothing that points to her taking it. But there is a gap in aisle 6 where the camera is blocked by that massive serial display. That's the only blind spot. Mr. Hill frowned. So we can't conclusively prove she didn't do anything. Not yet, Tim said, but I'm not done. Sometimes the corners of other cameras can catch something indirectly, like a reflection on the freezers. I'll keep checking. Lucy nodded. Thanks, Tim. Let us know right away if you find anything. Tim went back to the footage, and Katie mustered a tiny smile in gratitude for his efforts. He'll find something, Lucy whispered, giving Katie's hand a squeeze. The evening rush hit around 6. People finishing work streamed in, grabbing groceries for dinner. Many recognized Katie, and many had already heard the rumor about the missing wallet. She braced herself each time someone approached, but nearly all of them were supportive. A few less familiar faces eyed her warily, unsure what to believe. She tried not to let it show how much those looks hurt. Todd, for his part, remained perched near the manager's office, crossing his arms and tapping his foot. Occasionally, he would walk around the store, scanning the floor, as if he expected to catch Katie hiding the wallet somewhere. Whenever Katie caught sight of him, she felt a jolt of fear mixed with a surge of indignation. She clung to the knowledge that the truth would come out eventually. She had done nothing wrong. Finally, around 7 p.m., after the second wave of evening shoppers subsided, Tim emerged again. His face looked more animated, a flicker of excitement in his eyes. He beckoned Mr. Hill, Lucy, and Katie into the security office, asking Todd to come as well. Todd entered with arms folded, a scowl plastered across his face. Tim pointed to the screen. I found something on one of the cameras that faces the refrigerated section. There's a reflection in the glass that catches a partial view of aisle 6 right near that big cereal display. It's not super clear, but watch carefully. He pressed play. The footage was grainy, but they could see Todd in the reflection stopping mid-aisle to grab an item from the shelf. Suddenly, something thin and dark slipped from his jacket pocket. It looked like a wallet. It hit the floor near the end of the aisle. Todd continued walking unaware. He turned the corner, leaving the wallet behind. Katie, further down the aisle, appeared moments later. She bent down, seemed to pick something up. Then, before she could do anything else, another figure flashed into view from the edge of the screen, stooping near Katie. The angle was poor, but it looked like the person rushed forward quickly. Tim paused the footage. It's not Todd, obviously, because Todd's already out of the frame. This person is wearing a dark hoodie. They appear to snatch the wallet out of Katie's hands the moment she picks it up. Then they dart away out of frame. Notice Katie's expression. She looks startled. Lucy breathed, so Katie didn't steal anything. She was picking up Todd's wallet and that random person grabbed it. Exactly, Tim nodded, continuing the footage frame by frame. They could make out Katie calling after the thief, who clearly fled. Then the reflection angle was lost. We didn't notice this earlier because it's so hard to see. The camera focuses on the refrigerators and the reflection is partially obscured. Todd stared at the screen in silence, seeing the truth unfold. Katie clearly never had the chance to do anything with the wallet. She was trying to retrieve it and was interrupted. Todd's face paled, realization dawning. Tim let the footage run. They watched Katie in the reflection rushing after the figure, presumably to stop them from escaping with the wallet. The next camera angle picked up only Katie near the back door, apparently searching for the thief who had vanished. Finally, Katie had returned to the front of the store, looking shaken but not saying anything because the moment she got back, Todd was already making a scene at the registers. And from that point on, Todd's accusations drowned everything else out. It seems that the real thief got away, Tim concluded grimly. But it was Katie. Katie's eyes filled with tears, relief mixed with the residue of hurt she'd carried all day. I remember picking something up, she said softly, her voice shaking. Then someone grabbed it from me. I didn't even see them clearly. I tried to follow, but they ran off so fast. By the time I got to the back corridor, they were gone and I heard Todd yelling. Todd swallowed, his anger replaced by a stunned remorse. His gaze dropped to the floor, avoiding Katie's eyes. I didn't see any of that. I was too busy. He cleared his throat, struggling. I'm sorry, I jumped to conclusions. Lucy stared at him, arms crossed. You didn't just jump to conclusions. You publicly humiliated Katie in front of customers. Todd's cheeks reddened. Look, I was panicked. That wallet had everything in it, cards, ID, money for my trip. I was terrified I'd lose it, and I saw her behind me, so I assumed. He let out a breath. I realize now that was wrong. I had no reason to believe she'd do something like that, especially with no proof. Mr. Hill stepped in calmly. Todd, you owe Katie an apology, and it should be a public one. Todd nodded, swallowing hard, guilt written across his features. Of course, anything. He glanced at Katie, sorrow in his eyes. I'm truly sorry. I made horrible assumptions. Katie, though still trembling from the emotional toll, nodded. She wasn't one to hold grudges, but she had been deeply hurt by the accusations. She squeezed Lucy's hand for support. The manager guided everyone out of the security office and into the store. The staff and a few late-evening shoppers were still around, some obviously waiting with bated breath to see if the truth had come out. Mr. Hill politely asked for a moment of everyone's attention. He introduced Todd, explaining that there had been a terrible misunderstanding. He then handed the floor over to Todd, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else than standing under the store lights, about to make a humiliating confession. Todd cleared his throat, eyes flicking toward Katie. I accused Katie here of stealing my wallet. I was wrong, completely wrong. Security footage shows that Katie tried to protect it. She actually picked it up after I dropped it, and a thief grabbed it from her before she could return it to me. I shouted at her, humiliated her, and caused a big scene. For that, I'm truly sorry. I was out of line. Katie, please forgive me. A hush settled over the store as Todd's words echoed. Then someone started clapping. Linda joined in, Lucy, then several regular customers. The applause swelled, some cheering Katie's name. Katie's eyes shimmered with tears. She felt overwhelmed by the release of tension and by the support from everyone around her. She managed a small wave, a thankful smile. One of the customers, an older man named Mr. Parson, gently patted Katie's shoulder. We never believed for a second you'd do such a thing, he said kindly. Others voiced their agreement. Mr. Hill spoke up. Let's hear it for Katie's honesty and courage. She tried to do the right thing when she saw that wallet on the ground. She's a hero for stepping up. Another wave of applause echoed through the store, a warm sound that made Katie's heart swell with both relief and gratitude. She realized she wouldn't just be forgiven, she would be celebrated. Todd, face flushed, waited for the clapping to die down. Is there any way I can make this up to you, Katie? I feel awful. Please let me know if there's anything. He paused, looking genuine for the first time all day. Gone was the angry, accusatory man. All that remained was someone who understood he'd caused irreparable stress and embarrassment to a person who didn't deserve it. Katie glanced at Lucy, who nodded encouragingly. Then Katie, with her inherent kindness, said quietly, I don't want anything from you. I just wanted everyone to know I didn't do it. She paused, eyes meeting Todd's. But thank you for apologizing. Todd offered a half-smile, relieved. Thank you, I'm really sorry. And with that, the tension that had haunted the store all day seemed to dissolve. Customers resumed their business, but with a satisfied air of resolution. Many stopped to give Katie a hug, a handshake, or just an encouraging word. She accepted them all, though she was still shaky inside. The day had been a roller coaster, and though it ended with vindication, the emotional weariness lingered. Todd quietly left soon after. He didn't retrieve his lost wallet, there was no sign of the thief, but he did leave behind something intangible, a sense of regret, a lesson about judging others, and a path for Katie to step even further into the spotlight of respect. Without any official ceremony, she had become something of a local hero, someone who did the right thing even under suspicion. As the store lights dimmed for closing time, Katie felt exhausted but strangely triumphant. She helped to gather the stray carts, locked up certain shelves, and put her name badge away for the night. Mr. Hill approached her and said softly, "Take tomorrow off if you'd like, rest, you've been through a lot." But Katie shook her head, offering a small, sincere smile. "It's okay," she said, "I like being here." Mr. Hill laughed softly. "All right, but if you change your mind, let me know. We all care about you, Katie." She nodded. "Thank you." She looked around her store, and felt a swell of gratitude. It wasn't just the place she worked. It was a community that valued her, supported her, and believed in her innocence. Today had tested that bond, but in the end it held strong. When she finally stepped out into the cool night air, Katie tilted her head to the sky. She remembered the day she first interviewed for this job, unsure if she'd be accepted because of her Down syndrome. She remembered the manager back then, Mr. Hill, who didn't hesitate to hire her simply because he saw in her the qualities any good employee should have: kindness, dedication, and a willingness to learn. Now those very qualities had kept the store's faith in her even when the evidence wasn't immediately visible. It was a powerful reminder that good deeds sometimes go unnoticed, but they remain truths that can't be erased. In the parking lot, Lucy caught up with Katie. "Hey," she said softly, "any chance you want me to drop you off at home? I know your shift ended and I don't want you walking if you're feeling upset." Katie appreciated the offer. Normally she took the bus, but after such a challenging day, the thought of a quiet car ride with a friend sounded comforting. "I'd like that," she said. They climbed into Lucy's car, the engine humming gently. As Lucy pulled out of the lot, she placed a comforting hand on Katie's arm. "You were brave today," she said. "I've never seen you upset, but you handled it as best as anyone could." The truth came out in the end. Katie stared through the window at the streetlights passing by, a thoughtful expression on her face. "It was scary," she admitted. "Being accused, it felt so big, so loud." Lucy nodded. "Yes, but your reputation speaks louder. Everyone knows you. Today was just an ugly moment. It doesn't change who you are." Katie leaned back, letting Lucy's words soothe her. The nighttime roads glided beneath them, each streetlight illuminating a patch of pavement before they sped past and entered darkness again. She realized that even in the darkest moments, the people who truly knew her had stood by her side. That was the real comfort she needed. They arrived at Katie's home, an apartment building with welcoming lights in the windows. Lucy parked briefly, walked Katie to the door, and gave her a final hug. "Call me if you need anything, okay?" Katie nodded, unlocking the door. "Thanks, Lucy." In her apartment, Katie found her parents already anxious, aware something had happened at the store. She carefully explained the day's events, her mother's face morphing from worry to anger to relief as she recounted the misunderstanding. Her father, usually calm and measured, grew visibly upset hearing that she'd been singled out, but he breathed easier upon hearing the resolution. "That man owes you more than an apology," her father said with a grunt. "It's all right," Katie responded, her calm eyes reflecting her natural forgiveness. He said sorry. Her mother reached out, clasping Katie's hand. "I'm so proud of you for staying strong. You know, sometimes in life people will doubt you just because they don't understand. I'm glad your friends at the store understood." Katie squeezed her mother's hand gently. "Me too." That night, before drifting off to sleep, Katie let her mind wander to the day's events. She'd been accused in front of half the town, yelled at, publicly humiliated. But she'd also been championed, supported, and ultimately proven innocent. The mix of emotions was potent, but as she lay under her blanket, she realized something. If she could come through this, face someone's unfair anger, and still hold onto her sense of self, that meant no accusation could truly break her. The memory of applause, her coworkers' unwavering faith, and Todd's final apology lingered as a more powerful truth than the original accusation. It was enough to let her heart find some peace. The next morning, Katie was up with the sun. She prepared her usual lunch to bring to work: a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a carton of juice, and an apple. Her parents fretted, wondering if she should take that day off as Mr. Hill had offered. But Katie shook her head adamantly. She wanted to go to greet every customer with the same warmth she always had. Hiding at home would only make the memory of Todd's accusations loom larger in her mind. So she rode the bus to Greenfield Groceries, stepping off at her usual stop. The crisp air felt invigorating, as though it was reminding her of a new beginning, a second chance to rewrite the narrative from the previous day. She walked in, gave a cheerful wave to Mr. Hill, who was already stationed at the customer service desk, and clocked in. Everything felt comfortingly normal. Katie retrieved her apron, pinned on her name badge, and headed out to greet the early shoppers. She decided not to bring up the events of the day before unless people asked. Some did, of course, curious regulars who wanted the full story. Katie told them politely and succinctly, always ending with, "But everything's okay now." Each time she received words of admiration for how she handled the confrontation. Around mid-morning, a small surprise awaited her at her usual greeting post, a bouquet of flowers and a note that read, "To Katie, thank you for showing us that kindness always wins. The Greenfield team." She picked up the flowers and smiled, her heart warming at the sight of delicate petals in pastel colors. She tucked them carefully behind the customer service counter so they wouldn't be in the way. Their scent lingered, a fragrant reminder that she was valued. The day went on. It was a steady stream of customers, some who knew nothing of yesterday's drama and others who were eager to show their support. A few even patted their pockets jokingly and said things like, "I'm trusting you with my wallet," followed by a good-natured laugh. Katie laughed along, not offended. Humor was a way the community was showing they were on her side. Just before lunchtime, Katie felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to see Todd standing there. Her throat tightened at the memory of his anger, but his demeanor was entirely different now, sheepish and apologetic. He held a small box in one hand, glancing around as though unsure he was welcome. "Hey," he began in a quieter tone than before. I wanted to come by and see if you were here. I owe you more than just words. I was a real jerk." Katie's posture remained cautious but polite. "Hello, Todd," he swallowed, extending the box. "It's not much, just some pastries from that bakery down the street. A friend told me it's the best in town. I thought maybe it could be a token of my apology, but if you'd rather I just leave you alone, I understand." She glanced at the box, then met his eyes. Slowly, she nodded, accepting the gift. "Thank you," she said softly, not unkindly. Todd exhaled, relief washing over him. I talked to the police. They said they'll take my statement, but since the thief is unseen and gone, there's probably not much they can do. I guess that wallet's gone forever, or maybe they'll find it tossed somewhere minus the cash." Katie bit her lip. "I'm sorry, I tried to catch him." He shook his head. "No, I'm sorry. You did more for me than I deserved, especially with the way I treated you. Listen, if there's anything I can do, you have a coffee break? Could I buy you something to drink or maybe donate to a charity you care about? I just need to do something to fix this terrible impression." She appreciated the remorse in his voice. "Maybe it would be nice if you helped other people realize not to accuse so quickly," she said quietly. "Next time you see something suspicious, maybe remember yesterday." Todd nodded quickly. "Absolutely, I've learned that lesson the hard way." He stepped aside as a customer approached, not wanting to interrupt Katie's job. He raised his hand in a small wave. "Thank you again, I'll be on my way." Katie watched him go, feeling a complex rush of emotions, relief, residual hurt, and a cautious sense of forgiveness. She turned back to the customer, greeting them with her usual warmth. Life moved on, as it always did in the grocery store, one interaction at a time. That evening, Mr. Hill made an announcement over the store's intercom shortly before closing. He kept it brief, thanking all employees for their hard work and specifically praising Katie for her exemplary conduct and patience under pressure. Katie blushed at the mention of her name over the speaker system, but the staff around her clapped, some even whistling playfully. When she finally stepped out into the cool evening air, once again she felt a sense of closure. Todd's final visit and the store's acknowledgement helped her find a deeper peace. The day had tested her, but in the end, truth and compassion had won out. She walked to the bus stop with a lighter step, thinking about how swiftly a villain can appear and vanish and how quickly suspicion can spread, but also how strong a community can be in defending one of their own. A few days passed, and the incident became part of the store's lore, an example employees discussed in break rooms about how quickly misunderstandings can escalate and how vital it is to handle conflicts calmly. Customers who hadn't been present heard secondhand stories, often concluding with admiration for Katie's resilience. For Katie herself, the memory never fully disappeared, but it no longer held the sting of fear or humiliation. Instead, it became a testament to her own strength and the loyalty of her friends. She carried on day by day, brightening the grocery store with her presence, the incident gradually fatting into a shared chapter of her life story. Months later, a local journalist heard the tale from one of the store's regulars. Intrigued, she reached out to Mr. Hill to see if she could do a small feature on the Down syndrome grocery store hero. Mr. Hill asked Katie if she was comfortable with it, and after a moment of hesitation, Katie wasn't one for the spotlight, she agreed, thinking it might help others see that disabilities don't define character or capability. The journalist visited, taking notes and interviewing Katie in a quiet corner near the store's cafe. She was warm and encouraging, asking questions about how Katie felt that day, how the staff responded, and what advice she'd give to others who might face wrongful accusations or prejudice. Katie answered honestly and earnestly, hopeful her words might touch someone who needed to hear them. The article was published in the local paper under the Community Heroes section. It summarized the events, how Katie was wrongly accused, how the truth was found, and how she emerged recognized as a hero. It highlighted the way she'd always gone the extra mile for customers and ended with a note about inclusivity in the workforce, how Katie's presence exemplified the value of hearing individuals of all abilities. After it ran, a small wave of visitors to Greenfield Groceries asked specifically for Katie, wanting to meet the person they'd read about. She handled the extra attention with grace, focusing on her job first and foremost. It felt strange to be suddenly recognized by strangers, but most were simply kind souls offering praise and gratitude for her story. The memory of Todd's accusations no longer stung, but served as a reminder of the complicated ways fear and assumption can lead people astray. Katie had survived it and come out stronger, an emblem to everyone around her that good intentions can prevail even when misunderstood. And day by day, Katie continued to do what she did best. Greet every customer with a genuine smile, help those who needed it, and ensure that no matter who walked through those sliding doors, they felt seen, acknowledged, and cared for. In the weeks following the newspaper feature, life at Greenfield Groceries found a new, uplifting rhythm. Conversations around the break room sometimes drifted to Katie's story, how she'd been publicly shamed and then vindicated, how she'd risen above the anger to preserve her own sense of integrity. People admired her patience and courage. The shift managers took note of how she'd handled conflict calmly, compassionately, and found inspiration in her example. Even new hires were told the story as a reminder to uphold the store's welcoming environment. Katie herself appreciated the quiet sense of normalcy returning. She continued greeting customers, cleaning carts, helping folks who seemed lost, and sharing a warm word with everyone who passed by. The occasional new face still came in asking, "Are you the Katie I read about?" And Katie would blush, nod, and smile. One afternoon, a mother brought her teenage daughter just to meet Katie. The girl had recently been diagnosed with Down syndrome, and the mother wanted her to see a role model who proved that kindness always wins. Katie spent nearly half an hour with them, guiding them around the store and letting the girl try out the price check scanner. It was a small moment, but it shone brightly, proof that Katie's story had reached beyond just one store's walls. Amid these pleasant developments, Mr. Hill continued offering new opportunities for Katie to grow. He'd realized that more than ever, she was an essential voice for the store's inclusive approach. One afternoon, he pulled Katie aside to his office. She walked in a bit nervous, as she always felt under a spotlight when called there. Mr. Hill offered her a seat. "Katie, we're preparing for our quarterly staff meeting," he said. "I'd like you to share a few words with the entire team just about the importance of respect and how we treat each other and our customers. After what happened, I think your perspective will mean a lot to everybody." Katie's eyes widened. She wasn't used to public speaking. The thought made her heart pound. "I'm not sure I'll know what to say," she admitted, twisting her hands in her lap. Mr. Hill smiled reassuringly. "You don't have to have a fancy speech, just share your thoughts. Our staff respects you and they'd really benefit from hearing your experiences, but if you're uncomfortable, I won't force you." She hesitated, recalling how she had stayed calm in a crowd even when falsely accused. Perhaps this wouldn't be so daunting. It was a chance to help her coworkers understand that small gestures could build big bridges. "Okay," she said softly. "I can try." In the days leading up to the meeting, Katie tried jotting down a few notes on a piece of lined paper. She wrote about what it felt like to be wrongly accused, how humiliating it was, and then how grateful she felt when her friends stood up for her. She wanted to emphasize that sometimes all it took was a single voice of support to counter a storm of accusations. She practiced a few times in her bedroom, her voice echoing in the stillness. When the quarterly meeting arrived, the entire staff gathered in the break room. It was crowded: baggers, cashiers, stockers, shift leads, Mr. Hill, Tim from security, Linda, Lucy, and even a couple of corporate representatives. Katie perched anxiously in a chair near the front. She could feel her heart pounding, her breath catching in her throat. Mr. Hill wrapped up his usual agenda items: sales numbers, scheduling updates, new promotions, and then introduced Katie. Polite applause filled the space. Katie stood, arms shaking slightly, but she breathed in and began. "Hi," she said quietly, eyes scanning the group. "I'm Katie, but you all know that." A murmur of soft laughter eased the tension. "I love working here because I get to meet people. Sometimes, though, people make assumptions about me." She paused, forcing herself not to glance away. "And I've learned that those assumptions don't have to define me." She held up the small note card where she had scribbled bullet points. "I wrote down a few things I wanted to say. One is, well, being nice isn't just a job for me. It's something I believe in. Everyone who comes in the store has something going on in their life, maybe stress, maybe happy news, maybe a bad day. You don't always know, so greeting them kindly might make a difference. It could be the only kindness they receive that day." She glanced around, seeing attentive faces, Lucy smiling, Linda nodding, Tim with arms crossed but a gentle expression, the corporate reps leaning forward. Encouraged, she continued, voice firmer. "When I was accused of stealing, it hurt me, but it also taught me how important it is that we stand up for each other. I couldn't do anything to change that man's mind on my own, but all of you helped. You believed me and you tried to find the truth. Even when he shouted, all of you stood by me. That matters. So I guess I just want to say, treat each other with respect, especially in the tough moments. And treat our customers with understanding, even when they might be angry. You never know what's happening in their lives." Her speech ended with a round of applause, not thunderous but heartfelt. Mr. Hill gave her a proud nod. She felt heat rise in her cheeks and she looked down shyly. Lucy rushed over and gave her a quick, supportive hug, whispering, "You did great, Katie." Linda chimed in, "Absolutely, we needed to hear that." As the meeting dispersed, Katie received kind words from coworkers and a few handshakes of appreciation. The corporate reps even asked if she'd let them feature her in an internal newsletter. Katie said yes, though she still felt a bit shy about it all. Life carried on. The seasons changed, and with it came new promotional events at Greenfield Groceries. One chilly autumn day, the store hosted a fundraising drive for a local community center, complete with discount coupons for customers who donated canned goods. Katie volunteered at the donation booth, greeting everyone who brought items with such genuine enthusiasm that by midday, the donation bins were overflowing. More than once, Linda quipped, "We should send you to all our charity drives, you're unstoppable." But the day wasn't entirely smooth. Amid the bustling crowd, an elderly woman named Barbara, one of the store's longtime regulars, collapsed near the bakery section. Staff members rushed over, some frantic, and Lucy called for an ambulance. Katie, who had been restocking the donation booth, hurried to the scene. She found Barbara pale, trembling, and struggling to breathe. Without hesitation, Katie sat on the floor beside her, gently held her hand, and spoke in a calm, reassuring voice. "It's going to be okay, Barbara. Help is coming," Katie said softly, scanning the older woman's face to maintain eye contact. Barbara's breathing was rapid and shallow. Staff members backed away slightly, giving them space while waiting for medical help. Katie stroked Barbara's hand, murmuring small words of comfort, urging her to breathe slowly. For a moment, Barbara's eyes focused on Katie's reassuring face, and her panic seemed to subside just enough that she could draw fuller breaths. The paramedics arrived swiftly, and seeing that Barbara was responsive and calmer, loaded her gently onto a stretcher. Before they took her away, Barbara clutched Katie's hand and whispered, "Thank you for not leaving me alone." Katie nodded, swallowing back tears, and let Barbara's hand slip away as the paramedics guided her out. The staff, initially frazzled, breathed sighs of relief once Barbara was in professional care. Lucy and Linda exchanged glances, both quietly marveling that, once again, Katie's gentleness had come to the forefront in someone's crisis. Later that week, Barbara's granddaughter came in to buy groceries and told everyone that Barbara was recovering well. She specifically asked for Katie to say, "My grandmother told me you're her angel, that you just stayed with her calm and caring, thank you." Katie felt a warm glow at hearing those words, though she brushed off the praise modestly. She was simply doing what felt natural to her, helping someone in need just as others had helped her. Each small kindness in her mind built a bigger tapestry of community support. As time went on, Mr. Hill began noticing that Katie's skill set had grown beyond greeting and bagging. She had an instinct for helping customers on a personal level, whether guiding them through a crisis or simply cheering them up with a bit of conversation. An idea formed in his mind to expand her role further. One afternoon, he took her aside in the cereal aisle and proposed something new. "Katie, we have a position that's not exactly standard, but I think you'd be perfect for it. A sort of customer liaison. Basically, you'd be more than just a greeter. You'd walk around the store, help people who have questions, link them to our existing services like personal shopping, or direct them to the manager if they have concerns. It's a step up from your current role, more responsibilities, a bit more pay." Katie's eyes lit up with excitement. "Really? You think I can do it?" Mr. Hill smiled. "Absolutely. In fact, I think you're already doing it, just without the official title. You make people feel safe. And we could use that all across the store, not just at the door." She accepted, a mixture of pride and anxiousness swirling in her stomach. Over the next few weeks, she shadowed Linda and Lucy in various departments, learning how to handle everything from a customer complaint about stale produce to inquiries on bulk orders. She took notes diligently, asked clarifying questions, and practiced writing up quick incident forms whenever something unusual happened. The more she learned, the more confident she grew. Her presence in the aisles became a familiar sight, Katie with her friendly smile strolling from end to end offering help. Customers got used to seeking her out directly when they needed anything. "Katie, which aisle has that new brand of gluten-free bread?" "Katie, can you help me find a manager? I lost my phone." "Katie, do you know if we have any more of that pumpkin spice coffee flavor?" She answered them all with unwavering patience. And in the rare moments when someone was upset, like when an item rang up incorrectly or a sale price didn't apply, Katie had a way of de-escalating tension just by listening intently and calmly guiding them to a solution. More than once, a fuming customer who had arrived with a complaint ended up walking away with a smile after Katie had spent a few minutes hearing them out. That was not to say she didn't encounter difficulties. One evening, a woman in a hurry accidentally bumped into Katie's cart, sending items spilling. The woman snapped, "Watch it." Katie apologized, though she hadn't been at fault, and started picking up the scattered items. The woman stormed off without further comment. Katie felt a pang of hurt but shook it off, focusing on the fact that not every person would treat her kindly, but she didn't have to mirror their anger. Late autumn brought a surge of holiday shoppers. The aisles swelled with families preparing for big dinners and celebrations. Katie found herself guiding frantic cooks to the right seasonings, helping parents with toy suggestions, and reassuring college students that the store was open extended hours if they needed late-night groceries. On Thanksgiving week, the lines at the registers stretched long, tension building as some folks grew impatient. Katie made a point of moving through the lines, chatting lightly, making jokes about holiday cooking disasters, or complimenting someone's choice of pie filling. Even a small spark of humor cut through the stress for many. A new twist came when Todd, yes, that Todd, reappeared one crisp afternoon in early December. This time he walked in with an anxious expression, but not directed at Katie. Rather, he seemed worried about something else. Katie was assisting at the customer service desk when Todd approached, recognition flickering in his eyes. "Hi, Katie," he said in a subdued tone. "I'm back in town for some legal stuff. My day been rough, But well, I wanted to see how you're doing. Looks like you got a new position. Katie nodded, her posture a bit guarded. While she had forgiven Todd, the memory of his outburst lingered as a painful bruise on her trust. Still, her nature was to be kind. Yes, she said, customer liaison. I help people find things, solve problems. Todd offered a small smile. That's great, it suits you. He hesitated, obviously wanting to say more but uncertain how to proceed. I'm here to pick up a few groceries and I was wondering if you had time for coffee after your shift. My treat, maybe we can talk. He paused, searching her eyes. I owe you a proper conversation. I've thought a lot about how I acted and I just want to let you know what it meant to me that you forgave me. Katie assessed him quietly. She saw genuine remorse, not forced or performative. Part of her was wary, not wanting to rehash painful memories. Another part of her recognized this as an opportunity for closure, a chance to convert a terrible moment into an understanding. Okay, she answered. I get off at 5. So at 5, Todd was waiting outside the store with 2 takeout cups in hand. He gestured to a bench near the parking lot where the winter sun was already setting, painting the sky in pale oranges and pinks. They sat, the air crisp, sipping coffee quietly at first. Eventually, Todd cleared his throat. After that day, I did a lot of soul-searching, he began. I realized I have a tendency to suspect the worst in people, especially if they're different from me. I hate admitting that, but it's true. When I lost my wallet, my fear jumped straight to blame. You suffered the consequences of my fear. He took a shaky breath. Then I saw how your community rallied around you, how you remained calm and kind. It made me think about how I've lived my life always on the defensive, always assuming the worst. It's no way to live. Katie listened, steam curling from her coffee cup into the cold air. I understand being afraid, she said gently, but fear doesn't mean we can hurt others. I was afraid too, but I'm lucky people believed in me. He nodded. I realized if the roles were reversed, I'd want someone to believe in me, to give me the benefit of the doubt, but I didn't give you that. He lowered his head, a rueful expression on his face. I'm not asking for you to excuse me, I just wanted you to know I've changed. I've tried to volunteer in my community, be more open-minded. I even joined a local group that helps with disability awareness. I guess I wanted to say that you had a bigger impact on me than you may realize. Katie's features softened. She wasn't used to hearing how her actions could ripple outward to change someone's life. She tapped her coffee cup, forming the words carefully. That's good to hear, I'm glad. Silence enveloped them for a moment, then she offered a small, tentative smile. Thank you for telling me. Are things better for you now? Todd shrugged. In some ways, yes, I'm still traveling a lot for work, which is what brought me back, but I'm trying to approach things differently, less rushing, more empathy. He met her gaze earnestly. I was thinking, if you're open to it, maybe we can stay in touch. I don't expect us to be best friends, but I'd like to keep learning from you. Or maybe I could help at the store if there's ever a volunteer event. Part of Katie still felt the memory of his accusations, but she could also see his willingness to grow. She wasn't one to turn away someone who was honestly trying. We do a lot of fundraisers, especially around the holidays, she said. You could come help if you're in town. Todd nodded eagerly. I'd like that. They finished their coffees, parted ways with a handshake that felt something like redemption. That evening, Katie's thoughts were a mixture of relief and lingering caution. But overall, she felt hopeful that even someone who'd wronged her so deeply could learn and strive to become better. It was a testament that kindness, while vulnerable to exploitation, also had the power to transform. The following week, Todd actually showed up to a canned food drive the store was hosting, helping unload donations from customers' cars and stacking them in the designated area. He worked quietly, occasionally glancing in Katie's direction to see if she noticed him following through on his word. She offered him a small, affirming nod each time. Neither made a grand display out of it, but the simple presence of Todd lending a hand spoke volumes about the changes he was attempting. Meanwhile, Katie's responsibilities continued to expand. Mr. Hill decided to integrate a community outreach initiative within the store, and he appointed Katie as a key figure in coordinating it. The aim was to partner with local shelters, schools, and nursing homes, providing everything from leftover baked goods to free grocery tour that taught budgeting and nutrition. Katie oversaw the sign-up sheets, the scheduling, and even pitched ideas for special events, like a Healthy Kids Day where children could try different fruits and learn where they came from. This new role put Katie's organizational skills to the test. She learned to juggle phone calls, coordinate with external nonprofits, and manage volunteers within the store. Linda joked that Katie was quickly becoming one of the most vital employees in the entire operation. Lucy teased, at this rate you'll be the one behind Mr. Hill's desk soon, which made Katie laugh. Still, it wasn't always easy. Some nights Katie went home exhausted. Her parents noticed the stress creeping into her posture, the slump in her shoulders, the faint circles under her eyes. They reminded her not to overdo it, to take breaks. Katie tried. She found balance by focusing on small joys, a funny story from a coworker, a sweet note left by a child in the produce section, or a lunch break spent chatting with Linda about the new romance novel she was reading. These tiny moments of joy fueled Katie's passion, reminding her why she loved the job so much. Holiday season turned into the new year. The store's decorations shifted from tinsel and wreaths to cheerful winter sales signs. Katie continued to float around, wearing her new badge that read Customer Liaison in neat letters. One day, a father and his 2 kids came in. The kids seemed cranky and bored. Katie took a moment to show them the produce mist that sprayed water over the vegetables, explaining in an animated way how it kept the vegetables fresh. The kids giggled, letting go of their earlier fussiness. The father looked visibly relieved, thanking Katie with a warm grin. Moments like that reinforced how every small act of kindness could change someone's day. At some point, a local nonprofit that organized job fairs for individuals with disabilities reached out to Mr. Hill, asking if Katie could speak at one of their events. They wanted to highlight success stories, particularly individuals who were thriving in integrated work environments. Mr. Hill passed on the invitation, and Katie, after some consideration, decided to accept. She still wasn't comfortable with public speaking, but she recognized the importance of representation. Maybe her story could inspire someone else looking for employment. A few weeks later, Katie found herself standing at a modest podium in a community center, facing an audience of individuals with various disabilities and their families. She prepared note cards just like for the staff meeting and felt the same butterflies in her stomach. Looking out, she saw faces filled with hope, anxiety, curiosity. It reminded her of how she once felt, uncertain if she'd find a place to fit in. She began softly. "Hi, I'm Katie. I work at Greenfield Groceries as a customer liaison." She paused, scanning the attentive crowd. "When I was first hired, I was nervous. I worried people might see my Down syndrome before they saw my abilities. But I learned that if I approach people with kindness and honesty, most of them see the real me. That's the key, never be afraid to show who you are and what you can do." She touched on the day she was wrongly accused, briefly explaining how scary it was, how it made her question whether she truly belonged. Then she described the store's reaction, the unwavering support of her coworkers, and ultimately how it led to an even bigger role for her. She concluded with, "Whatever your disability is, it's one part of you, but it doesn't define your passion, your kindness, your skill. Work somewhere that values you not just as a worker but as a person." When she stepped down from the podium, the applause felt almost overwhelming. Afterwards, several young adults approached her, some with Down syndrome, others with different challenges. They asked questions about her routine, how she managed stress, how she handled rude customers. Katie gave honest answers, sharing tips she'd learned the hard way, like stepping away for a quick breath when feeling overwhelmed or finding an ally among coworkers for emotional support. Later, she bumped into a former teacher from her high school, Mrs. Sanford, who had come to the event in support of another student. Mrs. Sanford's eyes shone with pride. "Katie, I remember when you were in my classroom, giving presentations with shaky voice and sweaty palms. Look at you now, speaking to an entire audience, sharing your story. I'm so proud." Katie blushed. "Thank you, you always believed in me," she said. They exchanged a warm hug. In that moment, Katie felt a rush of gratitude for everyone who'd stood by her side over the years. Her journey was woven with threads of support, and she was determined to pay that forward. Back at Greenfield Groceries, the months rolled on. Katie's new responsibilities deepened as she took on planning store events. A family fun day, a senior discount afternoon, and more community outreach programs in partnership with local charities. People began referring to Katie as the store's unofficial community captain. Lucy declared it in a playful tone one day, and the nickname just stuck. Of course, not every day was sunshine. There were still difficult customers, occasional staff conflicts, and the usual hiccups of retail life. Technical glitches at the registers, inventory mix-ups, schedules that left employees short-staffed. Katie sometimes found herself mediating arguments between coworkers in the break room or gently guiding a frustrated customer to Mr. Hill's office for a calm discussion. Yet even these tense moments were opportunities for growth. Katie learned to speak more assertively when needed, to set boundaries without losing her natural warmth. Eventually, corporate took notice. A regional manager visited one afternoon, observing the store's operations. He spotted Katie directing a group of seniors toward the sampling station for new low-sugar pastries, then watched her escort a confused family to the international foods aisle. He later asked Mr. Hill, "Who is that employee? She seems to be everywhere, solving problems before they start." Mr. Hill beamed with pride. "That Katie, she's one of our best." The manager was so impressed that he invited Katie to a regional conference for grocery chains, an event where employees from multiple stores shared best practices and innovative ideas. The invitation arrived in a crisp envelope, which Mr. Hill handed to Katie like it was an award. "You've been requested to join the panel on community engagement. They want to hear from employees who excel at fostering customer loyalty." Katie gawked at the fancy lettering. "Are you sure this is big?" "Positive," Mr. Hill said, a gentle smile on his face. "You've earned it." The day of the conference, Katie traveled with Mr. Hill to a nearby city. The conference center was large and bustling, with people in suits hurrying around, name badges swinging from their necks. Katie felt a tremor of nerves, recalling how formal events sometimes made her self-conscious. But Mr. Hill's presence comforted her, and she reminded herself that she was invited for a reason. Her experiences genuinely mattered. When it was her turn to speak on the panel, she joined two other employees from different grocery chains. One was a cheerful department lead who organized massive food drives. Another was a marketing specialist who used social media to advertise community initiatives. Katie represented the grassroots side, daily interactions, and personal connections. She told the story of how she'd started as a greeter, overcame a wrongful accusation, and eventually became a fixture in the community. The audience leaned in, captivated by her authenticity. After the panel ended, many attendees approached Katie asking for advice on replicating her success. Some asked how to train employees to be more empathetic, how to handle special needs or conflicts. Katie shared practical tips, offer consistent training, but also create a supportive environment. Encourage employees to help each other, not just compete, and never underestimate the power of a sincere greeting. That night, back at her hotel, Katie reflected on how far she'd come, from a timid new hire unsure of her place to someone whose words carried weight in a professional conference. She felt gratitude ripple through her. Gratitude for her parents who believed she could hold a job that truly fulfilled her. Gratitude for Mr. Hill, Lucy, Linda, Tim, and everyone else who'd stood beside her through challenges. Gratitude even for Todd, whose false accusation had inadvertently brought the store together in her defense and paved the way for her to become an even more valued member of the team. Soon, the next day dawned, and she returned to Greenfield Groceries, once again picking up her routine. The store had never felt more like home. The familiar clang of shopping carts, the smell of freshly baked bread drifting from the bakery, the chatter of customers greeting each other, it all enveloped Katie as soon as she walked in. Linda teased her about being a fancy conference star, to which Katie only laughed and shook her head. "I'm just Katie," she insisted. "Conference or no conference, I'm still me." The winter weather gradually gave way to warmer breezes, and with spring came yet another wave of store events. There was a fundraiser for the local animal shelter, which proved to be a hit. Katie organized a meet-and-greet adoption opportunity just outside the store, where people could interact with puppies and kittens. Her heart melted each time a family chose to adopt. She was so moved by it all that she and her parents even adopted a cat of their own, a shy tortoiseshell she named Clover. Later, a cooking demonstration for healthy summer recipes drew large crowds. Customers watched in fascination as a local chef showed how to make vegetable skewers and fruit sorbet. Katie, wearing a store apron, helped pass out samples, answering questions about where to find the ingredients. The store's sense of community seemed stronger than ever. During one lull in activity, Katie found herself thinking about the day Todd had accused her of theft. She stood near the aisle where it all began, glancing at the cereal display that had blocked the camera's view. The memory felt distant now, like a scar that had long since healed. Yet she never wanted to forget it entirely. It was a turning point, a moment that had tested her, the store, and Todd himself. Out of that ordeal came a lesson she'd carry forever. That character is revealed under pressure, and if you stand by the truth, eventually it shines through. She reached out and gently touched the edge of the shelf. The store was quiet at that moment, with only a few customers browsing. A memory drifted through her mind, how terrified she felt when Todd shouted, how the entire store seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the storm to pass. And then how Lucy, Linda, Mr. Hill, and half the regular customers sprang to her defense. She let out a soft, grateful sigh. As painful as the accusation was, it had shown her how deeply she was cared for. It also opened her eyes to the reality that not everyone would greet her with kindness, but that she had a resilience within herself and a supportive community around her. Just then, a mother pushed a cart around the corner, two young kids in tow. They spotted Katie, recognized her face from the store's charitable posters and greeting station, and smiled. "Katie, do you know where the Easter decorations are?" the mother asked. "We're a bit early, but the kids are excited." Katie's reflection ended. She turned, her smile brightening. "Of course, right this way." With that, she led them down the aisle, returning to her role as helper, guide, and friend. And that was Katie's life, a series of kind gestures, helpful advice, supportive presence, and big-hearted compassion. She wouldn't have it any other way. But the path ahead still had more chapters. That spring, a new store manager was assigned to oversee Greenfield Groceries as Mr. Hill took a position in the company's district office. Katie felt a jolt of nerves upon hearing the news. Mr. Hill had been her staunchest supporter, the one who saw past the limitations many assumed she had. She wondered what the new manager might be like, whether they'd value her the same way. On a Monday morning, bright with sunshine, Mr. Hill called a brief staff meeting in the break room. Standing beside him was a man in his 50s with neatly combed hair and a conservative tie. Mr. Hill cleared his throat to gather everyone's attention. "I want you all to meet Harold Turner, our new store manager. I'll be transitioning to a district role, but I'll visit often. I'm confident Mr. Turner will take good care of this place." The staff, including Lucy, Linda, Tim, and Katie, clapped politely. Mr. Turner introduced himself. "I've been with this company for 20 years, mostly in suburban areas. Looking forward to working with all of you. I've heard great things about Greenfield Groceries." At first glance, Mr. Turner seemed pleasant enough, though less warm and chatty than Mr. Hill. He had a more business-like stance, smiling briefly before launching into talk of profit margins, operational efficiency, and brand alignment. Katie, accustomed to Mr. Hill's more people-oriented style, felt a slight dissonance. Still, she reminded herself not to judge too quickly. The transition started smoothly. Mr. Turner spent his first weeks touring every department, talking to employees and studying the store's procedures. Katie introduced herself in her usual friendly way, explaining her role as customer liaison. He listened politely, nodding as she described the outreach programs and daily tasks. "That's interesting," he said, scribbling notes in a little pad. "I might have some ideas on streamlining that." For a while, nothing much changed in Katie's day-to-day life. She still made her rounds, assisted customers, and arranged community events, albeit with a few more sign-offs needed from Mr. Turner. He approved her proposals, though he sometimes requested budgets and projections in detail, which Mr. Hill had never insisted upon so strictly. Katie found it a bit intimidating. She wasn't used to typing up formal documents, but Linda helped her figure out the forms and spreadsheets. As the months rolled on, Katie noticed small shifts. Mr. Turner focused on cutting costs, sometimes reducing staff hours or changing product suppliers. While these changes weren't inherently bad, they did affect the store's atmosphere. Longtime employees grumbled when hours were cut. Some complained about the new suppliers delivering lower quality produce. Customer comments trickled in, mostly polite but occasionally pointed. "I love this place, but the fruit hasn't been as fresh lately." Katie tried to balance her loyalty to the store with her desire to see it maintain its welcoming environment. She carefully relayed any negative feedback to Mr. Turner, politely suggesting that certain cost-saving measures might upset loyal customers. He'd listen with a pensive frown nod but rarely reversed his decisions. Then came a more direct concern. Mr. Turner expressed skepticism about Katie's role. One afternoon, he approached her while she was helping an older gentleman find lactose-free milk. Once the customer left, Mr. Turner cleared his throat. "Katie, do you have a moment to talk?" She nodded, sensing the gravity in his tone. They stepped aside near the staff hallway. "I've been reviewing the store's structure," he said, tapping a pen against his clipboard. "We have standard roles: cashiers, stockers, department leads, security, and so forth. Your customer liaison position, while unique, might be duplicating certain responsibilities that could be absorbed by existing staff. I've been comparing the hours you spend each week to the store's net profits, as well as the tasks we pay other employees to handle. I'm wondering if we really need a separate role for this." Katie felt her stomach drop. "But Mr. Hill created this role because customers needed more personal help. I manage a lot of community events too." He raised an eyebrow. "Indeed, and that's admirable. But we also have a marketing department at corporate that can handle such events. As for assisting customers, we could train more floor associates to do that. I'm simply questioning whether we need a specialized position." Her chest tightened. She'd never had to defend her job description before. "Well," she said carefully, "there's a lot that goes into it. Customers sometimes need help across multiple departments. Rather than bounce them around, I can stick with them until their issue is solved. And the events we host, they often depend on local relationships I've built with nonprofits. I'm not sure corporate would maintain those relationships the same way." Mr. Turner frowned, though not unkindly. "I'm not making any decisions yet. I just want you to be aware that we're examining all positions for efficiency. Some changes might be necessary to ensure we remain competitive." Katie nodded, trying to keep her emotions in check. "I understand," she said, though inside she worried fiercely. This job wasn't just a paycheck, it was her purpose, her place in the world. Over the next few days, Katie tried not to let anxiety overshadow her work. She continued assisting customers, making sure they felt seen and supported. She reached out to her community contacts, like the animal shelter, the senior center, and the local school, assuring them that upcoming events were still on track. But in the back of her mind, she kept replaying Mr. Turner's words about efficiency and streamlining. She feared that the intangible benefits she provided, empathy, personal connection, trust, might be overlooked in favor of hard numbers on a spreadsheet. Lucy and Linda noticed her anxious demeanor. They cornered her in the break room one afternoon, demanding an explanation. Katie relayed Mr. Turner's concerns, her voice trembling slightly. Lucy's jaw tightened in anger. "That's ridiculous. You're the main reason half the customers come here instead of going to the big box store across town. We can't lose you." Linda nodded fervently. "We should talk to him, explain that you're essential." But Katie shook her head. "He's the manager now. He wants facts proof. I don't know how to give that because what I do isn't just about the bottom line." Lucy set her mug down with a thunk. "We'll show him. We'll get signatures or testimonials from customers. We'll do something." Katie gave a half smile. "I appreciate it, but let's not make it a protest. I don't want to create a fight." Linda crossed her arms. "Sometimes you have to fight for what's right, Katie." And so, quietly at first, Lucy and Linda began gathering stories from customers. Brief written comments about how Katie had improved their shopping experience, how she'd gone above and beyond. Some recounted how she guided them to the correct aisle and saved them time. Others wrote about how her kindness brightened a bad day. A few even mentioned how they donated to store fundraisers solely because Katie asked them with such sincerity. The stack of testimonials grew day by day. Linda typed them up into a neat document. They also asked employees to write about how Katie assisted with in-store issues, resolving disputes, covering breaks, training new staff on customer interactions. By the end of the week, Linda had compiled a small booklet's worth of praises. She approached Katie with it, pride shining in her eyes. "We're giving this to Mr. Turner. He can't ignore our voices." Katie held the booklet carefully, scanning a few comments. Her eyes teared up at the warm words. I don't know what to say, thank you. Lucy put an arm around Katie. We should be thanking you for making this store what it is. Despite her gratitude, Katie worried how Mr. Turner would react. She didn't want him to feel ambushed or undermined. In her heart, she believed dialogue was better than confrontation, so she decided to approach Mr. Turner calmly and ask for a meeting. He obliged, setting aside time after store hours on a Friday. Katie, Lucy, and Linda went in together, Katie holding the booklet, Lucy and Linda there for moral support. Mr. Turner leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised. What can I do for you three? Katie cleared her throat, hands trembling slightly. You mentioned you weren't sure if my position was necessary, so we gathered feedback from customers and staff about what I do. She placed the booklet on his desk. We just want you to see that it matters. Mr. Turner exhaled, taking the booklet. He flipped through it, eyes skimming testimonials. The room was silent, the tension thick enough to weigh on Katie's chest. Finally, he closed it, looking thoughtful. This is impressive, he admitted. I see a lot of personal stories, compliments, community involvement. That certainly has value. Lucy couldn't hold back. It's more than just value. Katie is the reason we have such high customer loyalty. People come here to see her, not just to buy groceries. That's a competitive edge. Mr. Turner nodded slowly. Yes, you make a good point. Customer loyalty is important. He turned to Katie. You've done a lot of good for this store. However, we must balance that with operational realities. Linda tensed. Sir, with all due respect, maybe the difference in profit or overhead you're looking for is offset by the fact that we don't lose customers to bigger chains. That's real money. Mr. Turner tented his fingers, considering. You have a fair argument. I'd like time to go through this feedback thoroughly. He gestured to the door. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Let me think on it. They left the office unsure whether the meeting was a win or a delay. Katie thanked Lucy and Linda for their support, but her heart remained heavy with uncertainty. She dreaded the possibility of losing the role she'd poured herself into so completely. Yet she resolved to continue doing her best day in and day out until Mr. Turner made his decision. The weekend passed uneventfully. Katie worked her usual shifts, smiling at customers, assisting with a children's coloring event in the produce section, and thanking donors for a small pet food drive. On Monday morning, as the store opened, Mr. Turner approached her near the entrance. He carried the booklet in one hand. Katie, he said, voice measured, I spent the weekend reviewing this material and comparing some of our recent data. Customer satisfaction ratings are notably high, especially in areas you're closely involved with, like special events and personal assistance. I can't deny that you bring a unique value to the store. Katie held her breath. Therefore, Mr. Turner continued, I'm not eliminating your position. In fact, I'd like to refine it to ensure we capitalize on your strengths. I want clear metrics like how many customers you assist per shift, how many community events you manage, and the resulting sales uptick if we can measure it. If we can document that clearly, it'll help us show corporate your impact. Relief surged through Katie so powerfully that she nearly swayed. Thank you, she managed. I'll do whatever's needed to prove it. A hint of a smile tugged at the corner of Mr. Turner's lips. Good, let's work together on this. With the right structure, maybe we can replicate your approach in other stores too, but let's focus on Greenfield first. He handed the booklet back, nodding respectfully. Your colleagues care a lot about you. I hope you see that as a testament to your importance here. She nodded, eyes bright with gratitude. I do, thank you for giving me this chance. And so, Katie's position was not only saved, but given a renewed sense of direction. She coordinated with Linda and Lucy to log interactions more systematically. Each time she helped a customer find a product, each event she organized, each positive piece of feedback. It felt strange, quantifying kindness, but she understood it was necessary in a business framework. Once a week, she met briefly with Mr. Turner to go over the data. He began to see in black and white just how many people Katie touched in a single shift. And gradually, a respect formed between them, different from her bond with Mr. Hill, but a respect nonetheless. In time, Mr. Turner even started consulting Katie when making store-wide decisions. He recognized her unique insight into customer needs. The tension they initially felt softened into a mutual understanding. He was still methodical and numbers-focused, but he saw that some aspects of success couldn't always be captured on a balance sheet alone. Summer arrived, bringing new waves of customers eager for barbecue supplies, fresh fruit, and cold beverages. Katie kept up her outreach, organizing a blood drive in the store parking lot, helping sponsor a local Little League team, coordinating back-to-school supply donations. She thrived in the hustle and bustle, flourishing with the knowledge her job was secure. One bright Saturday morning, as Katie was setting up a lemonade stand for a charity fundraiser, she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she saw Todd once again, hands in his pockets, wearing a cautious smile. Hey, Katie, he said, I heard about the new charity drive, thought I'd drop off some canned goods. Katie smiled warmly, noticing he was carrying a shopping bag of donations. Thanks, Todd, let me put these in the collection bin. She took the bag, scanning its contents, soup, vegetables, pasta sauce. This will help a lot of families. He shrugged, but there was a sincere glow in his eyes. Thanks to you, I try to help whenever I can. He hesitated, glancing around the bustling store parking lot. Also, I just wanted to say hi, see how you've been. I'm good, Katie replied, busy but good. That's great, Todd exhaled, glancing at the colorful balloons tied near the lemonade stand. You're doing well for yourself. It makes me happy to see that. Katie took a moment to observe him. There was a softness to his demeanor, a humility that hadn't been there before. She recalled the hatred in his eyes that long ago day when he was convinced she was a thief. Now he was someone else entirely. She felt a sense of satisfaction not because she craved an apology but because it validated her belief that people could change if given the chance. She gestured to the lemonade table. Want a cup? It's $1. All proceeds go to the local youth center. Todd grinned. Sure thing, he said, fishing out a few bills and dropping them into the donation jar. He sipped the lemonade and sighed contentedly. Fresh squeezed? Yep, this morning we had a bunch of volunteers. She nodded toward a group of teenage helpers from the youth center busy refilling pitchers. They like being involved and it helps them practice social skills. Todd's eyes flicked to the kids, a curious, understanding expression crossing his face. That's really nice, he said softly. He took another sip, then turned back to Katie. I'm actually thinking of moving closer to Greenfield. I realized I like smaller communities better than the city. That meeting I came for a while back ended with me taking some time off. But now I've got a new job opportunity, remote work mostly. Figured I'd settle somewhere calmer. Katie felt genuine happiness for him. That's good news, she said. If you move here, you'll see we have a lot of community events. I might rope you into volunteering more often, she teased. He chuckled, count me in. The conversation was brief but warm. A customer approached needing Katie's help, and Todd stepped aside graciously. After she'd pointed the customer to the correct aisle, she looked back to see Todd tipping his cup in a casual salute, then heading off. In that fleeting exchange, Katie felt again how life had a way of weaving people in and out of her story, teaching lessons on forgiveness, growth, and connection. She returned to her tasks, assisting with the lemonade stand, greeting shoppers, and overseeing the donation bins. By the time the event ended, they'd raised a tidy sum for the youth center. Exhausted but triumphant, Katie helped pack up the remaining supplies. Lucy high-fived her. We did it again, you're unstoppable. Linda, lugging a box of cups, smiled in agreement. Another success to add to your monthly report for Mr. Turner. Katie nodded, wiping her brow. Let's keep it rolling. And so it went month after month. Katie's presence at Greenfield Groceries became a fixture as unchanging as the store's walls, yet always alive with new ideas, new events, new moments of kindness. Through changing managers, shifting corporate strategies, and the ebb and flow of community needs, Katie remained the steady heart of the store. Even Mr. Turner eventually admitted at a district meeting that our success with community engagement is largely because of one determined employee who refuses to give anything less than her best. From that day when she was wrongly accused of theft, forced to stand defenseless before an angry stranger, Katie's life had taken a path nobody could have predicted. The wound of being accused had hurt deeply, but it revealed the depth of support around her, launching her into a role where she could channel her compassion in an even bigger way. She became the hero of her own story, not by seeking glory, but by adhering to her simple, unwavering principle, kindness first. Sometime later, in early autumn, the store hosted a large celebratory event to mark Katie's 6th anniversary working there. Employees gathered in the break room with a cake shaped like the Greenfield Groceries logo, complete with an icing-sculpted version of Katie's name badge. Mr. Hill, who happened to be visiting from his district office, gave a little speech praising Katie's dedication. Lucy and Linda presented her with a card signed by nearly all the employees and a host of regular customers. Even Mr. Turner said a few words about how integral she had become to their operation. Katie, shy in the spotlight, ducked her head, cheeks flushed, but inside she felt an overwhelming warmth. As everyone clapped and cheered, she realized that the meltdown caused by Todd's lost wallet years ago had been a turning point, painful, humiliating, but ultimately transformative. It taught her that in moments of crisis, people show who they truly are. And in that moment, the people around her had shown her unconditional trust. It also taught Todd a lesson about judging others. Perhaps it had taught the entire community something valuable about unity and empathy. As the applause died down, Katie took a piece of cake, giggling at the icing on her fork. She looked around the break room at the smiling faces, coworkers who'd become friends, some who felt like family. She saw the reflection of her own journey in their eyes. Then she glanced at the store's hallway mirror, catching a glimpse of herself. A small voice in her mind said, "You've come so far, you belong here." And in that moment, she believed it more than ever. Katie woke on the morning following her 6th anniversary celebration with a lingering sense of joy. The break room party still glowed in her mind, and she thought of the cake shaped like the Greenfield Groceries logo. Everyone had seemed genuinely happy for her. Even now, hours later, recalling the celebrations filled her with a contented warmth that made her morning routine lighter. Her mother was already up, making breakfast in the cozy kitchen. The aroma of scrambled eggs and toast drifted through the apartment. Katie slipped into a chair, greeted by her father's newspaper crackling as he thumbed through the headlines. "Morning sunshine," her father said. "Your big day was something else. What's next for our rising star?" Katie smiled, still shy about the attention. "Just work as usual," she said, accepting a plate from her mother. "Mr. Turner asked me to formalize a few of our upcoming events. I guess I'm meeting with him to go over the next quarter's community outreach schedule." Her mother gave her a proud pat on the shoulder. "Keep it up, sweetheart. You've turned that store into a community hub." Katie nodded, sipping orange juice. I'll try. By the time she arrived at Greenfield Groceries, the early morning light bathed the store's glass front in gold. Carts rattled in the parking lot and a small group of customers trickled in. Katie paused in front of the automatic doors, inhaling the crisp air, letting the warmth of the rising sun settle in her mind. This was her domain, a place that felt like home. She clocked in and made a quick round, greeting the regulars. Mrs. Miller in the floral department was rearranging a fresh bouquet of lilies. Mr. Lee, the produce manager, was rolling out a cart laden with fresh melons. Linda and Lucy were near the registers, waving when they spotted Katie. She waved back, noticing Linda was in the middle of a hearty laugh about something. The store bustled with typical early morning energy. Once she felt the initial wave of greetings was done, Katie headed to Mr. Turner's office. He'd left her a note the previous evening requesting she stop by to discuss upcoming plans. She lightly rapped on the door. A muffled come in greeted her. Stepping inside, she saw Mr. Turner seated at his desk, a neat stack of papers in front of him. He gestured at a chair. "Morning, Katie, grab a seat." She sat, folding her hands in her lap. He flipped through his notes, nodding in approval before looking up. "First, I want to say congratulations again on 6 years. That's quite a milestone." Katie's cheeks warmed. "Thank you," he continued in a more businesslike tone. "I've reviewed your last few reports on community events, including the senior discount afternoons, the pet adoption drive, and the children's reading corner. I'm impressed. Sales do see an uptick on those event days, especially in the middle of the store. We also get positive mentions on social media." Katie felt a small jolt of pride. "That's great to hear." Mr. Turner tapped his pen on a blank page. "I'd like us to plan out the next quarter in a more structured way. Maybe a monthly community Saturday where we feature a new partner each time. We can schedule them all in advance, promote them in flyers, and track the results." "I like that idea," Katie said. "We can reach out to the nonprofits we already work with. I also have a list of new ones that contacted me after the local newspaper ran that story about our store." "Perfect. Let's start with 3 major events over the next 3 months, aiming for consistency and measurable results." They hashed out dates, times, and a rough outline. Katie jotted notes rapidly, feeling excitement bubble up as they fleshed out possibilities. A healthy cooking demo in partnership with the local school's nutrition club, a mid-spring fundraiser for youth sports, and a donation drive for a women's shelter. She envisioned the store alive with visitors, kids participating, volunteers handing out flyers, a sense of unity fueling each event. When they finished, Mr. Turner tidied the paperwork. "We'll share these plans at the next staff meeting. Make sure you keep track of everything: attendance, donations, any sales spikes. I'll forward your data to districts so they see the concrete impact." Katie nodded eagerly. "Absolutely." Before she left, Mr. Turner paused, leaning back. "Katie, one more thing. I wanted to let you know corporate was impressed with your talk at the regional conference. They're thinking of featuring you in an internal newsletter about exceeding customer expectations. It's not final, but I wanted to give you a heads up." Her eyes widened. "Oh, that's wow, okay, I'll do my best." He gave a thin, polite smile. "Just be yourself, that's why they like you." Katie thanked him, stepping out of the office with a flutter of excitement mixed with nerves. She remembered how she felt at the conference, standing on the stage, sharing her story and noticing how others listened so intently. The idea of being featured in a newsletter was exciting, but it also made her feel a bit self-conscious. She never aimed for fame, she just wanted to help people. Still, if her story encouraged other stores to adopt a more welcoming, inclusive spirit, she considered it worthwhile. After tucking her notes safely in a folder at the customer service counter, Katie resumed her daily rounds. She passed by Lucy, who was helping a customer wring out some produce. Lucy gave her a curious look. "Meeting go okay?" Katie nodded. "More events are on the way, we'll need all hands on deck." Lucy grinned. "You know me, I'm in." At mid-morning, a light drizzle began outside, pattering against the store's windows. Katie swung by the entrance to ensure the floor wasn't slippery. She greeted an older couple stepping in with umbrellas. Then, from the corner of her eye, she noticed Todd's figure approaching through the automatic doors. He was without an umbrella, wiping water from his jacket with a sheepish grin. "Hey, Katie," he greeted. "Caught in the rain on my way over. I moved into my new place last week, didn't realize how often this area gets sudden showers." Katie's eyes lit up. "Oh, so you officially moved? Congratulations," he nodded, brushing droplets from his sleeves. "Thanks, it's a small rental house, but it suits me. I've been meaning to drop by, pick up some groceries." He paused, a bit awkward. "And maybe sign up for any volunteer events you have coming up." "We're planning something for next month," Katie said. "I'll add your name to the volunteer roster if you'd like." "That'd be great." Todd grabbed a shopping basket and offered a friendly wave before he headed to the aisles. Katie watched him go, reflecting on how drastically their relationship had changed from that tumultuous day. Now Todd seemed almost eager to be part of the store's community. She found it heartening, a reminder that negative encounters could lead to positive transformation if people allowed themselves to learn and change. She said a silent thanks for how it had all worked out. The day rolled on. Katie spent time helping an elderly woman find lactose-free desserts, assisted a young couple trying to locate a particular brand of dairy-free cheese, and even offered a quick cart to an overwhelmed mother wrangling 2 toddlers. She never lost the sense of gratitude for her role. It wasn't all easy sometimes, the job wore her out, but it always felt worth it. By late afternoon, the store filled with an afterwork crowd. Katie stationed herself near the self-checkout area to assist people confused by the scanners. At one point, a harried-looking man with a wrinkled shirt kept fumbling at the payment screen, muttering in frustration. Katie approached gently. "Need help?" He looked up, relief in his eyes. "Yes, please, these screens hate me," he joked. Katie showed him how to key in his produce codes and guided him through the final prompts. He scanned his credit card and the receipt printed. "You're a lifesaver," he said, heading out with a grateful nod. She exhaled, noticing how many small tasks filled her day. It was a pattern, minute acts of guidance that together formed a supportive net for the store's customers. She pondered how to quantify this for Mr. Turner, then decided to make a mental note to record these interactions. Data might not capture the exact feeling of relief on someone's face, but at least she could list the volume of her assistance. As the evening rush calmed, Linda beckoned Katie over to the break room. Inside, Katie found Lucy, Linda, and a few other coworkers opening large pizza boxes. "We had some leftover money in the employee fund," Linda announced. "Figured we'd order a couple pizzas for dinner. Come join us." Katie's mouth watered at the sight: pepperoni, veggie, cheese. She'd eaten a quick lunch hours ago, so the invitation was too good to pass up. Settling down, she accepted a slice from Linda with a grin. The staff members chatted about random topics: movies they wanted to see, local sports teams, holiday weekend plans. Occasionally, someone mentioned a customer story, especially the more memorable or challenging ones. Lucy nudged Katie at one point. "I heard from the rumor mill that corporate wants to put you in a newsletter. Did Mr. Turner confirm that?" Katie nodded, wiping sauce from her chin. "He said they might interview me. I'm a bit nervous." Linda chuckled. "You're used to that by now. You've given speeches, had your name in the paper, everything." "I know, but it still feels surreal. I don't want to mess it up. I just do my job," Katie said, shrugging. She took another bite of pizza, savoring the gooey cheese. The group finished off the pizzas, cleaned up, and gradually dispersed back to their stations. Katie found her next set of tasks took her near the bakery. She chatted with the bakery clerk, Carla, who was arranging fresh muffins behind the glass. Carla confided that she'd been struggling to keep up with special orders since a coworker called in sick. Katie offered to help label some boxes, carefully spelling out customers' names for birthday and anniversary cakes. Carla sighed with gratitude. "I owe you one, Katie." Later, just before her shift ended, Katie took a moment to record the day's notable interactions in a small notebook she kept in her apron pocket. She listed how many customers she'd helped locate items, how many checkout issues she'd resolved, and if any had specifically thanked her or mentioned how her help impacted them. After that, she tidied up the notebook, placed it in her locker, and headed out into the evening air. The sky had cleared, the earlier drizzle was gone, leaving damp sidewalks shimmering under the streetlights. Katie hopped on her usual bus home, quietly reflecting on the day. Thoughts of the upcoming events bounced around in her head, as did the prospect of that corporate newsletter. She also wondered if Todd was truly settling into town. Maybe soon he'd become a regular, just like Mrs. Miller or Mr. Parson. The notion brought a small smile to her face. When the bus arrived at her stop, she stepped off, walking the short distance to her apartment building. Inside, she found her mother in the living room watching TV, her father dozing in the recliner. Katie greeted her mom, tiptoed by her dad so as not to wake him, and headed to her bedroom for some much-needed rest. But that night, instead of falling asleep easily, her mind flitted from thought to thought. She wondered if she should ask Mr. Turner for more hours to truly handle the new responsibilities. She also considered whether the next big step might be a management position. The idea scared her a little. She enjoyed her current role, but over the years she'd grown more confident in leading and planning. Maybe she could do more if given the chance. Still, a small voice in her heart whispered caution. She remembered how changes in management nearly jeopardized her job once. And she remembered the sting of Todd's original accusation, how it rattled her sense of belonging. Stepping into a leadership role might open her up to more scrutiny, but it could also let her protect people like herself, employees who had unique challenges and talents. The possibilities stretched out in her mind, neither purely good nor purely bad, just complicated. Eventually, she drifted to sleep, her dreams a soft haze of grocery aisles and smiling faces, resonating with the day's events. The following weeks were busy. Katie dived into planning the community Saturdays Mr. Turner envisioned, scheduling calls with local nonprofits, and mapping out times for store demos and donation setups. She enlisted Linda and Lucy to help with logistics, printing flyers, and ensuring enough staff coverage during the events. Between tasks, she continued her usual function, roaming the store, assisting anyone who looked lost or confused. One Wednesday afternoon, while Katie was reviewing a sign-up sheet for volunteers, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. Pulling it out, she saw an unfamiliar number. Normally, she let unknown calls go to voicemail, but something nudged her to answer. "Hello," she said cautiously. A woman's bright voice replied, "Hello, is this Katie from Greenfield Groceries?" "Yes, this is Katie." "Wonderful, I'm Nicole Avery, a writer for the corporate newsletter. I got your number from Mr. Turner. He said you'd be open to chatting about your role." Katie's heart did a little flip. "Oh, right, sure, thanks for calling." They arranged to talk later that day during Katie's break. Katie found an unused corner near the store offices and dialed back. Nicole's voice was perky, easy to talk to. She asked Katie to recount her journey, how she was hired, her responsibilities, the special events she organized, and the day she was wrongfully accused. At first, Katie hesitated to share that darker memory, but Nicole gently urged her. "We really want to highlight how you overcame challenges," she explained. So Katie recounted the wallet incident, focusing more on how the community rallied around her. She didn't want to villainize Todd, especially now that he'd changed. She simply explained that she was accused unfairly, how the evidence emerged, and how the store's support ultimately reaffirmed her place. Nicole listened with rapt attention, occasionally making small appreciative noises. As they wrapped up, Nicole said warmly, "This is exactly the type of story we like to feature. Expect a draft in your email soon, and you can let me know if any details need adjusting." Katie thanked her, then ended the call, feeling both nervous and excited. She wondered how public the newsletter would be, probably just within the grocery chain, but it still felt like a big deal. She hoped her words would encourage other stores to embrace employees with different abilities, or at least remind them that compassion was as critical to a store's success as any cost-saving measure. That night at home, Katie found she wasn't quite as anxious as she'd once been about the spotlight. Maybe she was growing used to it, or maybe she believed more firmly that her story could genuinely help others. She mentioned the call to her parents, who beamed with pride, praising her for her courage. Time marched on in gentle rhythms. The store's first Community Saturday arrived, a partnership with a local nonprofit that provided meals to underprivileged families. Katie set up a large bin for non-perishable food donations near the entrance, hung bright posters around the store, and stationed volunteers to greet donors. Within a few hours, the bin overflowed. Lucy kept running to the back room for extra collection boxes. Families brought in cans of vegetables, boxes of pasta, cereal, baby formula, and more. Shoppers commented on how grateful they were that Greenfield Groceries continued to hold events like these. Mr. Turner stopped by to observe, nodding the activity. He watched Katie chat with a mother and daughter who had each brought a small bag of groceries to donate. The mother told Katie, "My little girl wanted to share the cereals she likes so other kids can have something yummy too." Katie knelt to the girl's level, thanking her personally for her kindness. Mr. Turner's expression softened as he saw the interaction, a clear example of the intangible but powerful effect Katie had. The day ended with a remarkable volume of donations. The nonprofit representatives who came to pick them up were stunned by the generosity. "We usually don't get half this many donations in one day at other drives," one volunteer said. "Your store must have a good reputation for caring." Katie grinned, "We're just glad to help." She made sure to record the final tally, snapping a few pictures for the store's social media. Linda teased her, "Look at you turning into a social media guru." Katie laughed. "I'm barely figuring it out. Lucy's the one who knows hashtags. I just take pictures." Regardless, the posts were well received. Comments rolled in from community members praising the event, many nomming Katie specifically. Mr. Turner saw the online engagement metrics and nodded in approval. The success of Community Saturday spurred plans for the next one, this time focusing on a school supply drive. In the midst of planning, Katie finally received an email from Nicole Avery containing a draft of the internal newsletter article. The piece was titled "Building Community One Smile at a Time." Her heart fluttered as she read it, seeing her own quotes woven into a narrative that highlighted her story. Nicole had touched on Katie's Down syndrome only in the context of how it gave her a unique perspective on empathy. The article emphasized that Katie's main superpower was her caring approach toward customers. It briefly referenced the wrongful accusation and how the store banded together to clear her name, then ended with Katie's vision for the future. A place where everyone is welcome and no one is overlooked. Tears blurred Katie's vision by the time she finished. She was touched by how respectfully and insightfully Nicole had captured the story. She wrote back with a simple acceptance, just a few minor corrections like clarifying Lucy's name, which Nicole had misspelled. Shortly after, she received confirmation that the article would go to print in the next newsletter release. When Katie showed the draft to Lucy, Linda, and even Mr. Turner, they applauded her. "That's fantastic," Lucy said, giving Katie a side hug. Linda beamed, proclaiming that the store staff would demand signed copies. Even Mr. Turner placed a hand on Katie's shoulder. "You've represented us well," he said. "Thank you." Over the next month, Katie busied herself with the second Community Saturday, a school supply drive. She coordinated with a local elementary school principal who mentioned that many students in the area couldn't afford basic supplies. Katie took the initiative to design a small store display where shoppers could purchase discounted packs of pencils, notebooks, crayons, and markers to donate right on the spot. Several employees pitched in to decorate it with construction paper cutouts of school buses and apples. Lucy set up a pledge board where donors could write a short, encouraging message for the students. On the day of the drive, families poured in, some buying extra supplies for personal use but also donating a few items to the bin. Kids scribbled good luck notes to unseen classmates, while the principal and a few teachers stood by, thanking every donor personally. Katie occasionally took the microphone at the front, inviting shoppers to check out the donation station in aisle 5, making her voice ring out with warmth over the store's speakers. Halfway through the day, Todd strolled in carrying two large shopping bags, each filled to the brim with pencils, notebooks, and colorful binders. He approached the donation station with a grin, offering them to the grateful teachers. Katie, setting down the mic, met his gaze with a smile. "That's really generous of you," he shrugged casually. "Figured these kids could use a good start. Besides, I got a decent discount thanks to your sale. It was too easy to say no." Katie nodded. "Still means a lot, thank you." The hours flew by in a flurry of donated supplies and cheerful chatter. By day's end, the donation bins were stacked high with boxes. Lucy snapped pictures of Katie and the teachers standing behind the mountain of supplies. "Smile," Lucy said, capturing the moment on her phone. Later, Katie posted it on the store's social media, adding a heartfelt caption thanking the community for their outpouring of support. As employees cleaned up, the principal pulled Katie aside. "You have a gift," she said. "The way you inspire people, I haven't seen anything like it. You make giving feel effortless." Katie blushed. "I think people in this town are just kind." "Maybe, but you bring it out of them," the principal insisted, giving Katie a grateful handshake. "Don't ever doubt your impact." Moments like that made the long hours and organizational stress worthwhile. Katie felt a rush of purpose, a reaffirmation that her job went far beyond stocking shelves or greeting customers. She was fostering something bigger, tangible kindness in the fabric of the community. One evening, a couple of weeks later, Katie was jotting down data about the school supply drive, comparing donated items and approximate costs, when Mr. Turner approached her with an unfamiliar man in tow. Katie looked up from her clipboard, blinking. "Katie," Mr. Turner said, "this is Roger Hammond. He's from our corporate office, an assistant to the VP of Community Engagement." Roger was in his late 30s, neatly dressed with a polite demeanor. He extended his hand. "Pleasure to meet you, Katie. I've heard a lot about your efforts here." Katie shook his hand, feeling curiosity spark. "Hi, Roger. Nice to meet you, too." Mr. Turner cleared his throat, looking more relaxed than usual. "Roger's here to observe our store's community initiatives and gather ideas for a potential pilot program. Apparently, your newsletter feature got some higher-ups interested in replicating what you do." Roger nodded. "Precisely. We're testing the concept of a community liaison in a few other stores. We want to see if we can formalize the role. Naturally, we figured we should start by talking to the person who exemplifies it best. You." Katie felt a rush of surprise and a twinge of anxiety. She remembered the last time corporate meddled with her position and how precarious things once felt. Roger's expression was friendly, not threatening. How can I help?" she asked. "By letting me shadow you for a few days, if that's all right," Roger said, offering a reassuring smile. "I'd like to see how you go about the day, interacting with customers, coordinating events, solving problems. Then I might ask you some questions, maybe gather some staff feedback. Don't worry, it's not an audit, it's research." Katie glanced at Mr. Turner, who nodded. "I think it's a good opportunity," he said. "We can show corporate what's working here." So Katie agreed. Over the following days, Roger trailed her around the store, scribbling notes in a little leather-bound notebook. He observed her greeting customers, guiding them to products, listening to complaints, stepping in when lines grew too long, coordinating with Linda about an upcoming pet adoption drive. He marveled at how many different hats she wore in a single shift. She occasionally felt self-conscious with him hovering, but he was never intrusive. He asked questions gently, such as, "How do you know which customers need help without them asking?" Or "How do you decide which nonprofits to partner with?" Each time, Katie answered candidly, explaining that she tried to anticipate a shopper's confusion by their body language, lingering glances at aisle signs, a certain lost look in their eyes. As for nonprofits, she usually picked those with a clear local presence or an urgent need. She also introduced Roger to Lucy, Linda, and Tim from security, explaining how they all worked as a team. "I couldn't do it alone," Katie said. "Everyone helps." Roger jotted down nearly everything she said, occasionally pausing to watch her interact with a customer before scribbling new notes. At the end of his second day of shadowing, Roger invited Katie to sit in the break room for a quick chat, away from the store floor. She agreed, settling into a plastic chair near a vending machine. Roger took the chair across from her. "I'm impressed, Katie. You have a natural knack for empathy, yet you handle organizational details like event planning with surprising efficiency. That combination isn't common." Katie smiled softly. "Thank you, I just learned from experience. Mr. Hill, my old manager, gave me a chance to build these programs and I improved over time. Linda and Lucy taught me a lot too." "Well," Roger said, tapping his pen on the table, "I believe we can take your model and adapt it for other stores, but it'll require training materials, guidelines, best practices. I was thinking maybe you could help us create that framework. It'd be like writing down what you do step by step so others can follow suit." Katie froze momentarily, considering. Writing a step-by-step guide sounded daunting, like having to dissect her every instinct. "I'm willing to try," she said carefully, "but a lot of what I do is just personal connection. I'm not sure I can put that in a manual." Roger chuckled lightly. "We don't need you to put heart in a manual. That's something a person has to bring themselves. But we can create guidelines, like ways to communicate with nonprofits, how to track donations, steps to handle a customer complaint with empathy. Those sorts of things can definitely be taught." Relieved, Katie nodded. "I can help with that. I'd want Lucy and Linda to contribute as well. They're a big part of planning and day-to-day problem solving." Roger took another note. "Excellent, let's do that." Over the next month, perhaps you can start outlining your main tasks and methods. We'll refine it, gather feedback, and hopefully present a pilot proposal to corporate. Katie swallowed, excitement and trepidation swirling. I'll do my best. Roger smiled, shutting his notebook. That's all anyone can ask. They parted ways, and Katie carried this new assignment in her mind. She felt the weight of responsibility. If corporate planned to replicate her role, she wanted it done well. The last thing she wanted was for employees at other stores to be forced into a stiff procedure that lacked genuine compassion. She hoped she could help shape a framework that balanced structure with humanity. True to his word, Roger spent the following weeks gathering details, then offered Katie a rough outline to fill in. She spent part of her shift each day in the employee break room, typing up short paragraphs on a store laptop. She wrote about how to greet customers and read subtle body language cues, how to approach a local nonprofit with respect, how to create a sense of fun around donation drives, and how to log all of these efforts in a simple spreadsheet. Whenever she felt stuck, Linda or Lucy would pop in and offer suggestions. Linda reminded her about liability forms for fundraising events, which Katie forgot to mention. Lucy pointed out that younger volunteers sometimes needed parental permission slips. Tim from security added notes about safety measures, such as checking that donation bins didn't block emergency exits. Bit by bit, Katie compiled a thorough, if somewhat informal, guide. Occasionally, Mr. Turner dropped by to see their progress. At first, Katie worried he might scrutinize her writing, but he simply nodded and gave practical feedback. Yes, mention the best times of day for events too. We don't want donation bins backing up traffic during peak hours. Little by little, the document grew. In parallel, the store's third Community Saturday approached, a big fundraiser for the women's shelter. Katie was thrilled to plan something special. With Linda's help, she organized a personal care item drive, things like soap, shampoo, toothbrushes, and hygiene products. She also convinced a local pastry chef to donate cupcakes to hand out as a thank you for donations of 5 items or more. Lucy whipped up eye-catching posters that read, "Donate to empower women in need and enjoy a sweet treat on us." When the big day arrived, Katie stood by a decorated table laden with frosted cupcakes, each topped with a small, edible ribbon symbol. The manager of the shelter came, accompanied by a couple of residents who were comfortable speaking publicly about their experiences. They thanked donors, told small snippets of how the shelter had helped them rebuild their lives, and made heartfelt connections with customers who stopped to listen. Midday, Katie found herself listening to a customer tearfully recount her own past struggles. "I was in a bad situation once," the woman said, voice trembling. "I wish I'd known about shelters like this. I'm glad you're doing this drive." Katie squeezed her hand gently. "You're safe now," she said softly. "And every donation we get today will help another woman find safety." The woman nodded, blinking back tears, then dropped a bag full of soap, shampoo, and combs into the donation bin. "Thank you," she whispered to Katie. "You don't know how much this means." By the time the event ended, the store had collected hundreds of personal care items and nearly every cupcake was gone. The shelter representatives left with grateful hearts, promising to share pictures and a write-up on their own newsletter. Katie felt a pleasant tiredness, that satisfying ache in her feet from standing all day, but a glow in her heart from seeing the generosity poured forth. Late that evening, after closing, Katie and a few coworkers lingered to clean up stray wrappers, fold up tables, and sweep the floors. Lucy eyed the mountain of donated goods in the corner, stacked neatly in crates. "You ever look at all this and think, this is massive?" she asked, pausing to rest on the handle of a broom. Katie tucked a stray hair behind her ear. "Sometimes I'm amazed how much people give. We live in a caring town." "Maybe so," Lucy mused, "but we also have a caring liaison. People respond to you because you make them feel seen. Don't ever forget that." Katie's cheeks warmed. She gave Lucy a shy smile and resumed folding a tablecloth. Each event felt like an affirmation that, despite the occasional bumps, like Todd's false accusation or the earlier threat to her position, her place was secure, her efforts worthwhile. A few days after the women's shelter drive, Roger Hammond announced he was heading back to corporate. He wanted one final meeting with Katie and Mr. Turner. They gathered in the office, Katie holding the newly completed Manual of Community Engagement Best Practices. It was about 20 pages long, peppered with bullet points, examples, and real-life anecdotes from their store. Roger flipped through the document, nodding in approval. "This is fantastic, Katie. Exactly what we need, practical steps and advice plus real stories. Once I finalize the edits, we'll pilot the program in 3 stores to see if they can replicate your success." Katie felt a flutter of pride. "Thank you, I'm just glad it can help." Roger tucked the papers into his briefcase. "I'm sure it will, and Katie, I'm not certain of the timeline, but if the pilot program goes well, corporate might ask you to travel and train other employees. Would you be open to that? We'd, of course, compensate you for travel." Katie's eyes widened, flicking to Mr. Turner. His expression was unreadable, but she sensed a shift in the air, like big possibilities were on the horizon. Travel to other stores, that would be a whole new layer of responsibility. She swallowed. I think so, yes. "Want to make sure I could still do my work here, though." Roger nodded. "Of course, we'd figure out a schedule that works. This isn't immediate, so take your time to think about it. For now, keep doing what you're doing." He stood, shook both their hands, and headed out with a gracious wave. "I'll be in touch." When he was gone, Mr. Turner turned to Katie. Well, this could be a whole new chapter for you. How do you feel? Excited, she admitted, and a bit nervous. I've never really traveled for work. I like being here at my store. Mr. Turner offered a rare, reassuring smile. Don't worry, we won't push you into anything you're not ready for, but if the time comes and you choose to go, we'll manage things in your absence. We believe in you. Katie thanked him, heart thumping with anticipation. She was torn, part of her thrilled at the idea of helping other stores build strong communities, but another part feared leaving her comfort zone. Greenfield Groceries was more than a workplace, it was her safe haven. She reminded herself that any decisions would be weeks or months away. Life in the store continued. Katie and her team planned new events, guided customers, and kept track of stats for Mr. Turner's weekly updates. The internal newsletter article about Katie finally published, and employees across the region congratulated her, some even emailing to say how inspired they were by her story. Katie beamed with pride but stayed humble. I just tell my truth, she would say. Todd, for his part, appeared regularly now, sometimes volunteering a few hours a week. He struck up friendships with Tim from security and another bagger named Orlando. Occasionally, the three of them hung out after work. Whenever Katie saw Todd in the store, her mind flashed back to that day he'd raged at her, but it felt like a past life. Now he was almost part of the furniture, chatting with coworkers, cracking jokes, helping load heavy grocery bags into cars for elderly shoppers. He never tried to overshadow Katie, rather he followed her lead in acts of kindness, still learning. One early afternoon, Todd found Katie scanning a shelf for expired cereals. He sidled up next to her. Hey, mind if I pick your brain on something? She set aside a cereal box, turning to him. Sure, what's up? He rubbed his neck, looking hesitant. I've been thinking maybe I want to apply for a part-time job here. Nothing big, maybe a cashier or stocking position. But I'm worried some folks might remember what I did, how I acted. Katie tilted her head. There might be a few who recall, but most either forgot or see how you've changed. And if you're truly committed, I think people will give you a fair shot. We can't guarantee acceptance, but Mr. Turner is big on proven reliability and a strong work ethic. Todd exhaled. I do need more stable income now that I'm renting here, and I kind of love this place. Weirdly enough, it feels like a second chance. He gave a small, self-effacing laugh. I guess what I'm asking is, would you support me applying? Katie smiled gently. I believe in second chances, go for it. I'll put in a good word with Mr. Turner if you'd like. A flicker of relief crossed Todd's face. Thank you, that means a lot. He walked away with renewed determination. Katie watched him go, reflecting on the strange twists of fate that turned a one-time accuser into a friend who now wanted to work alongside her. It was a testament to how drastically people could grow. Sure enough, the following week Todd handed in an application for a cashier position. Mr. Turner interviewed him briefly, looked over the references, then offered a conditional hire subject to standard background checks. A few days later, Todd officially joined the staff. Lucy joked, we should have a welcome party with wallets as decorations, which made everyone laugh good-naturedly. Todd took the ribbing in stride, wearing an embarrassed grin. In his first weeks, Todd adapted quickly, learning the register system and the basics of customer service. Katie sometimes saw him in passing, scanning items with a professional smile. He was still a bit tense, perhaps fearing mistakes, but each time Katie caught his eye, he gave a small wave. She saw him strive to be patient with customers, even the irritable ones. More than once, she overheard him calmly diffusing a situation. I'm sorry your coupon didn't scan. Let me see what we can do. He'd come a long way from the angry, suspicious man who once lashed out at her. Meanwhile, corporate's pilot program started rolling in other stores. Katie occasionally got emails from employees out of state referencing the manual she helped write. They asked clarifying questions. How do you choose which nonprofits to partner with? Or what's the best way to track donations? She answered as best she could, mindful that each store had its own community culture. The more she interacted with them, the more she sensed that traveling to train staff might become a reality sooner than later. One day, an email from Roger Hammond landed in her inbox. Hi Katie, hope all is well. The pilot stores are requesting an in-person workshop on community engagement best practices. We'd love for you to lead one. Are you free for a short trip next month? Katie's heart thumped as she read. She clicked to see the proposed location, a store about 3 hours away by bus or car. She deliberated before replying, talking to Mr. Turner to ensure the store could spare her, discussing travel logistics with her parents, weighing her own nerves. But each conversation ended the same. People encouraged her to seize the opportunity. Mr. Turner offered partial coverage of travel costs. Her parents promised to help with anything she needed. Lucy joked that Katie should pack a pen for autographs, and Linda declared, you'll knock their socks off. So Katie emailed Roger back, I'd be honored to, let's schedule it. In the weeks leading up to the workshop, Katie prepared. She put together a brief presentation using slides, something she'd never done before, and included photos from Greenfield Groceries events as visual examples. She wrote out talking points, the importance of empathy, how to harness staff teamwork, ways to measure success without losing humanity. She practiced the presentation after work, sometimes in front of Lucy and Linda, who pretended to be an audience. They gave pointers such as speak a little louder or pause for questions here. The day of the trip finally arrived. Mr. Turner arranged for a rideshare car to take Katie to the pilot store. She waved goodbye to her coworkers that morning, feeling butterflies in her stomach. The ride was pleasant enough, the driver chatted lightly and Katie stared out the window, watching the roads lead her away from the familiar. It wasn't far, but it felt like a big step into unknown territory. When the car pulled up to the other store, a newer, larger branch with sleek automatic doors and a wide parking lot, Katie gathered her materials, took a deep breath, and headed in. Roger Hammond greeted her in the lobby, a beaming grin on his face. "Katie, you made it. How was the trip?" "Not bad," she said, smiling back, "just a bit nervous. You'll do fine." He guided her toward a small conference room near the back offices. About a dozen employees waited there, some in uniforms, some in plain clothes, all looking a bit unsure of what to expect. They perked up when Katie entered, scanning her with curiosity. Roger introduced her formally, referencing the newsletter article and her success at Greenfield. Katie felt a flush creep into her cheeks but tried to remain poised. She set up her slides and began speaking, voice shaky at first. She greeted them with a warm welcome, then launched into her story, how she started as a greeter, how she learned to read customers' needs, how her events grew from small donation bins to major community partnerships. She shared examples like the pet adoption drives and the women's shelter fundraiser and explained step by step how they were organized. The employees listened with rapt attention. Some scribbled notes, others nodded along. One man raised his hand to ask, "How do we get enough staff on board? My store sometimes struggles with employee turnover, so planning an event can be hard." Katie answered, "Yes, staff engagement is crucial. We found that starting small helps, 1 or 2 volunteers at first, and you make it fun, maybe offer them free coffee or treat them to pizza afterward. Once other coworkers see the event's success, they naturally want to join next time. It can grow from there." As the discussion went on, Katie relaxed, letting her natural warmth shine through. She told them about the day Todd accused her of theft, not focusing on the pain but on how the store rallied around her. "It taught me that strong community spirit starts inside the store. If we support each other, we can weather anything." She wrapped up by showing pictures of the bins overflowing with donations, lines of kids painting crafts during the healthy eating demos, and smiling seniors on discount day. "This is what's possible," she concluded. "If you make people feel valued, they'll respond with kindness, generosity, and loyalty." The employees burst into applause. Roger patted her shoulder, whispering, "Great job." A few staff members asked follow-up questions, and Katie lingered to chat with them one-on-one. One young cashier confided she felt too shy to approach customers the way Katie did. Katie suggested starting with small gestures, maybe just offer to help someone if they seem lost. Over time, it becomes second nature. An hour later, Katie found herself in the store's cafe area with a small group of managers continuing the conversation. They brought coffee, pastries, and a few local treats. She sipped her coffee, listening as they brainstormed which local nonprofits might partner with their store. More than once, they asked her to confirm details, like how to handle leftover items or where to place donation bins so as not to block foot traffic. Katie answered patiently, feeling a surge of confidence. She realized that she really was the expert here and that these managers looked up to her experiences. Eventually, the session wound down. Roger handed Katie a small folder. "In here, you'll find a summary of next steps for this pilot store," he explained. "They'll start implementing some community events soon and we'll see how it goes." Katie nodded, flipping through the documents. "I'm excited for them. I can't wait to see their results." One manager, a petite woman with curly hair, turned to Katie and said, "Thank you, you've given us a blueprint and a lot of hope. Our customers are a bit different here, but I see no reason why we can't build something similar." Katie gave a grateful smile. "I believe you can. The heart of it is caring about people." They said their goodbyes, and Roger escorted Katie back out to the store's entrance where the rideshare car waited. Before she climbed in, he grabbed her hand in a quick, friendly shake. "You did great, Katie. This is a big step for the company's approach to community engagement. I'll be in touch soon about more possibilities." Katie's mind whirled with the day's events. "Thank you for trusting me with this. I'm honored." She settled into the back seat of the car, letting out a long breath as it pulled away from the store. She felt a heady mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Even though the store was only a few hours from home, she felt as if she'd traveled to another world, one where she served as a teacher and ambassador of kindness. The thought made her chest swell with gratitude. During the drive back, she mentally replayed the workshop. She'd stumbled over a few words at the start, but overall it went smoothly. She pictured the staff leaning in, scribbling notes, looking relieved. A trickle of amazement ran through her. How had she ended up in this role, guiding others, when she once doubted she'd even be hired for a simple greeting position? She remembered the Todd incident vividly, his accusatory glare, the humiliating moment in front of the entire store. That day had seemed like it would destroy her. Yet it had proven to be the crucible that tested her standing in the community and only made it stronger. Sometimes, she thought, adversity reveals the best in people, both in oneself and in those who stand up to defend you. As the car neared Greenfield, the sun dipped toward the horizon. Soon she'd be stepping back into her own store, greeting Lucy and Linda, and checking in with Mr. Turner about how the day had gone in her absence. She felt a surge of eagerness to share everything she'd learned. Perhaps they could refine even more ideas for their store's next events. When she finally got home, tiredness seeped into her bones, but it was a satisfying kind of fatigue. She recounted the day's highlights to her parents over a late dinner. They listened with proud smiles, her mother dabbing at her eyes when Katie described the applause she received. Her father said, "I wish we could have seen you up there. Are Katie leading a workshop?" Katie ducked her head modest. "It wasn't that big, just a dozen people or so." "It's not the size," her father insisted. "It's the principle. You're sharing your heart and that's priceless." She went to bed that night feeling her life expanding in unexpected ways. Tomorrow she'd be back at the store, rolling up her sleeves for the usual tasks. Greeting, helping, maybe scanning a few items at checkout if lines got long. But she'd also be carrying a new sense of purpose, knowing she was part of a larger movement to spread empathy and community spirit. That sense of belonging in both her small-town store and the bigger company network enveloped her like a warm blanket. Before drifting off, she thought of all the people who had shaped her journey. Lucy, Linda, Tim, Mr. Hill, Mr. Turner, Todd, her parents, and even the customers who'd believed in her from day one. Each had played a role in transforming an ordinary grocery job into something extraordinary. With that final comforting thought, Katie's eyes closed on the quiet hush of night, ready to greet the next dawn and whatever new opportunities or challenges it might bring. Katie's first training trip out of town became a spark that lit many more. Over time, word spread across the grocery chain that Katie from Greenfield was the in-house expert on forging genuine connections with customers and communities alike. She traveled a handful of times to other stores, each workshop growing her confidence. Though she always felt a pang of homesickness for her own store and her own people, Katie sensed that sharing her approach, her heart, was helping employees far beyond Greenfield's borders. Between those trips, she returned to Greenfield Groceries and did what she always did: greeted customers, resolved problems, and coordinated events that brought people together. Even Todd, once the source of her most painful moment, had become a valued coworker and friend, always ready to volunteer or crack a self-deprecating joke about his earlier blunder. He seemed perpetually grateful for the second chance Katie and the rest of the team had granted him. In the 7th year of her employment, Mr. Turner scheduled a meeting to celebrate the store's ongoing success. The weekly staff gatherings, once mundane updates on scheduling and promotions, had evolved into something of a communal spirit booster. Employees arrived, chattering excitedly about the new line of organic produce, the next community fundraiser, or how the local paper had once again mentioned Greenfield Groceries as the small store with the big heart. Katie took her usual seat beside Lucy and Linda, who winked at her conspiratorially. Mr. Turner cleared his throat to call the staff to attention. He began by praising sales numbers good, but never the store's entire focus. Then he read customer feedback highlights. Once again, Katie's name and her team's community events popped up in nearly every comment. Grateful seniors, inspired parents, volunteers who said the store had become a beacon of warmth, line after line of praise that made Katie blush and the staff applaud. At the end, Mr. Turner turned to Katie with a formal nod. "And we have some news to share. Corporate headquarters wants to institute a permanent community engagement division within the company. They've studied your pilot program and deemed it a success, no more than a success, a model for every store to follow. They've offered Katie an official role overseeing the implementation chain-wide should she wish to accept." For a heartbeat, the break room fell silent, everyone looking to Katie with wide eyes. Lucy squeezed her hand, Linda beamed, Todd nodded encouragingly. Katie's cheeks burned with a swirl of pride, anxiety, and gratitude. She remembered how 6 years ago she'd been afraid to even accept a job interview, worried no one would see her potential. Now the entire company was recognizing her work. She stood, scanning the circle of coworkers who'd become her extended family, then glanced at Todd, who gave her a supportive thumbs up. A gentle smile spread across her face. "I appreciate this chance," she said softly. "But I also love being here in my store day after day. If I take a bigger role, I'd still want to stay connected to Greenfield. I want people to see you don't have to choose between a bigger calling and your home you can carry home in your heart wherever you go." Emotions rippled through the gathered staff, a few sniffles, plenty of nods. Katie left it at that for the moment, not fully committing but not refusing either. For now, she would do what she'd always done, take each step as it came, guided by the principle that everyone deserves kindness and understanding. When the meeting adjourned, Katie found herself pulled into a flurry of congratulatory hugs. Linda and Lucy teased her, calling her the future boss of the entire chain. Todd caught her eye from across the room. The warmth in his gaze told her he remembered precisely how far they'd come since that painful day. She returned his smile, heart brimming with gratitude. In the weeks that followed, Katie took the corporate offer on her own terms, agreeing to help build and guide the new community engagement division but remaining based in Greenfield for most of the year. She would still travel sometimes, meeting new employees and training them in person, but she'd always circle back to the store that had given her a home, a family, and a purpose. The day she signed the contract, she took a moment in the empty aisle where Todd had once lost his wallet. It was a funny thought how tragedy and triumph had converged in the very spot she now stood. She'd been terrified and humiliated then, but also surrounded by people who believed in her. She smiled to herself, running her fingertips along the edge of the shelf. She didn't regret a moment of it, not even the pain, because it led her here, to a life where her kindness could echo far beyond Greenfield's walls. On a warm autumn afternoon, Katie walked to the front of the store. The sun streamed through the glass doors and she took her place by the entrance, her old post, the one she'd started at so many years ago. A customer came in. Katie offered a handbasket with her familiar smile and asked, "How can I help you today?" She didn't need to say more, her presence spoke volumes. This store was still her haven, her starting point, and no matter how far she traveled or how big her role became, she knew she would always be Katie, the friendly face at Greenfield Groceries, forging a better world one small act at a time. Thank you for joining us on Katie's inspiring journey. If you enjoyed this story and want more uplifting tales, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. Your support helps us share more heartwarming content with you, stories that remind us of the power of kindness, perseverance, and community. We appreciate every single view, comment, and subscription.